The story begins with someone in a building shouting, "I hate this." Inside, a kind of aura enters a man's body. His eyes snap open in fright and he rises in desperation. After touching his head, he wonders what's happening, considering he had died and was now feeling the temperature of his supposed dead body and noticing his skin was as good as it was 10 years ago. By the way, speaking of 10 years ago, he realizes he's right back in his university dorm room from that time. To try to understand what's happening, he searches for his cell phone until he finds it under the pillow. With the phone in hand, he unlocks the screen to orient himself and then opens the camera to check his face, noticing there are no scars on it. In other words, he believes he has been reborn a day before the apocalypse. Before being reborn, he recalls that when he became the 10th war god of the dragon country, 2 war gods from the neutral zone invited him to an event in his honor. However, while they were talking, a zombie king suddenly appeared, and while the warrior was fighting this creature, the 2 war gods stabbed him in the back, aiding the zombie king. When the warrior's bloody body lay on the ground, a woman approached and questioned if Lin Zilu liked the gift that the Lee family left him for becoming a war god. Stating for just entered, Zilu was overtaken by fury, for the zombie king that Yo Jing Han brought had made a deal with the Lei family, and it also involved a legendary enchantment that had been locked away until then. Jing Hao was known as the typical schoolgirl every guy falls for, but instead of choosing someone cool, handsome, and popular, she ended up dating the protagonist. What he didn't know was that she had been instigated to approach him by the Lee family. Before the apocalypse arrived, he used the young man's help to expand the family's territory. After all this was done, they would get rid of the boy. The Lee family is one of the 3 largest in the Dragon City. Therefore, because of so much power, the protagonist paid a heavy price to escape. Since then, he has been pursued by the Lei for 10 years. After all this time thinking of Yo Jing Han, Zilu knows that if she hadn't been protected by the Lee family, he could have had his revenge. Anyway, now he's reborn, the apocalypse hasn't happened, and she's still his girlfriend. That is, this is his chance to kill her. By the way, he just received a message, precisely from Jing Han, saying she needs to tutor some children and won't be able to celebrate Zilu's birthday. Zilu is outraged and thinks this sounds more like some scam lesson his girlfriend must have had with the Lei family. As he punches the bed, he recalls that in his last life he received a video from Yo Jing as a birthday present, and it was so unforgettable. Then he sends a message saying he understands that the woman has responsibilities and asks the 2 to meet at the deserted warehouse behind the school. The girl asks why they have to meet right there, then Zilu tells her he has a surprise for her. After sending that message, the boy reflects that Lai Haobo hated him all his last life, but he didn't know that before he died. Zai thought it was because his father died a long time ago. Zilu's intention was to celebrate his birthday alongside his girlfriend, but instead he received that ridiculous video. For this reason, the boy thinks those 2 took away his chance to evolve. Be that as it may, now that he's alive again, the young man won't allow this tragedy to repeat itself, and he will make the culprits pay. Finally, Zilu leaves the dormitory in the late afternoon, then 2 guys were talking on the street about how the sky turns red. According to one of them, this is a natural phenomenon that happens once every 5,000 years. Hearing this talk, Zilu knows this sky is the sign of the arrival of the apocalypse game. When it's 7 p.m., this game will invade the real world and turn it into a giant game. Looking at the people around, the young man wonders who would be able to survive this. Sometime later, Zai arrives in front of a door, then he opens it forcefully, causing a loud sound. Having done that, he walks toward a woman who was inside. It was Jing Han, who needs to know soon what the surprise is as she has to teach the kids. At this point, Zilu prepares the knife he had hidden up his sleeve and asks the girl not to rush, as he will tell her soon. He approaches slowly and without saying another word, forcing the girl to make it clear that if he doesn't spill it soon, she will leave now. So not to let the silence prevail, the man attacks the woman, causing her phone to fall to the floor. Jing Han screams her boyfriend's name, not believing what he's doing, cursing him by all names and telling him to let go. Then Zilu begins the story saying that in the year 478, March 16, his woman spent almost 54,000 yuan at a super modern hotel in Modu. That same year, on the 29th of the same month, she spent almost 110,000 at the Hotel Kaidi in the same city. The girl asks what he's talking about, saying none of it makes sense. While he continues the story, repeating that in March of that year, she spent almost 110,000 in another hotel. Apparently not knowing exactly what the boy was talking about, Jing Han wonders why the dates and locations he mentioned sound so familiar. Finally, Zilu continues, stating that his girlfriend on April 13 spent almost 410,000 yuan at the Magic Night Bar. At that moment, Jing realizes that he's talking about the time she was with Lai Haobo, then asks her boyfriend to listen to the explanation she has. Zilu, for his part, can't imagine how on earth she could justify something like that. Also, he picks up the girl's phone from the floor and opens an app right then. They were his babe's chats with a certain master, which is the contact name she put for Lee Halbo. In them, the girl seemed eager to see the guy, whom insisted that she tell Zilu about the cheating, just to drive the guy crazy. But it doesn't stop there. This conversation is from today, and Jing Han was laughing at her boyfriend's face for believing that she would teach lessons to the kids. Lastly, Halbo asked if the girl had prepared the birthday present for the boy, and she confirmed that she did, in addition to asking the master to buy that purse she liked. Thus, Zulu reacts with that "I knew it" face. On the other hand, Jing Han didn't know where to bury her face. With the girlfriend under control, he opens the video she would send for the birthday, where she said, "Happy birthday to Lin Ziluo, my weak and dumb boyfriend." As he plays the video, the woman's mask falls, where she told the guy to put his mind to think. After all, why would she, the hottest girl in school, have a poor orphan who had nothing else in life besides seeming like he was dating her? At that moment, Jing Han sweats and wonders how he found out. Ironic, Zui Lu states that if Master Lai hadn't emphasized the girl so much in the video, Lu wouldn't have bothered to look at her. Jing simply couldn't believe that this guy knew exactly what the video was like, because as far as she knew, she had made it just for her lover. Zilu states that if it weren't for his girlfriend, the young Master Lai wouldn't hate him, so he wouldn't have had the chance to enjoy the wealth and glory. For this reason, the protagonist thanks his babe. That said, Jing Han relaxes her hands as if surrendering, while her boyfriend's hand remained on her neck. Then he asks if she isn't curious about how he knows all this. But without revealing anything, he lets go of his girlfriend's neck and tells her to find out in hell, because he's going to end her life right now. With his knife, the man hits the woman with such intensity that her hair is cut almost intentionally. Without mercy, Zilu delivers another stab, knocking Jing Han to the ground. Doing this, the boy pauses for a second to reflect and falls to his knees. With a completely different expression, he recalls that it has been 10 years. Remembering this, he lets out a laugh and starts to burst out laughing while repeating that phrase. After all, he finally did it. However, it's not enough. He still has Lee Halbo, who is hiding in that mansion along with the entire Lee family. At that moment, a cheat interface, which seemed to be from the Apocalypse game, has just congratulated the fact that the host was reborn successfully. At the same time, Zilu takes a look at the time, 6:15 p.m. According to him, the Apocalypse game will only descend at 7, but it just appeared at 6. Moreover, he had never talked about this cheat system that just appeared. According to the interface, the system can crack game data and give the host a better experience. Floating in a kind of enlarged database, Zilu hears that the system has just successfully connected with the host, so he asks the boy to extract his first cheat. Then a screen appears loading this ability, and it said that Zilu, instead of the 1% that is normal, has a 100% chance of dropping items from the zombie he kills. This means that it's guaranteed that he will win an item for every monster he defeats, which will certainly make this experience easy as pie. However, Zulu asks if this cheat is really reliable, but without getting a direct answer, he comes across a player status window where Lin Zilu has just seen that he's at level 0, and that every 10 levels he's entitled to one more overpowered ability. Finally, his first reaction is to appreciate how cool that was. Satisfied with the direction this is taking, Zilu knows he will be able to destroy the Lee family with this system. However, as one of the 3 largest families in the Dragon City, their combat ability is great. They not only have many soldiers, but also have a secret technique that allows people to increase their physical capacity. During the apocalypse, this technique becomes even more powerful. Speaking of which, Zilu still doesn't quite understand why Lee Halbo had such a big problem with him in the last life. It seems to have something to do with the death of Zilu's father a long time ago, but the protagonist will only know for sure when he conducts a thorough investigation into the Lee family's data. Finally, the plan is to kill Halbo first, then lay low and grow stronger. With this cheat, though, the boy can evolve much faster, making it not impossible to defeat such formidable enemies. With this in mind, Zilu pulls up his hood, eager for the showdown. Soon after, he leaves the building and without any remorse abandons the body of his girlfriend behind. On the street, the late afternoon seemed unusually inviting and people acted as if nothing was about to happen in just a few minutes. According to Zilu, they should enjoy it while they can, because during the apocalypse, no one knows who will devour whom. Next, the man heads to the hotel, where he asks the attendant for an hour's room rental, 3 bottles of water and 5 loaves of bread in case the cheat doesn't truly work. At least he'll be better prepared. The hotel clerk, engrossed in his magazine without any embarrassment, says the room will cost $40, each loaf $3, and each bottle of water $1. With money in hand, Zilu asks to include technique number 3 on his bill. Shortly thereafter, in his room, he recalls that at 5 minutes to 7 p.m. in his past life, technique number 3 turned into the area's zombie boss, and Zilu killed her right there. This time, He needs to kill her earlier to claim the reward sooner and level up faster, as well as verify if this cheat system is real or fake. That said, the so-called technique number 3 knocks on his door and announces her service. Zilu tells her to come in, then a beautiful woman opens the door and feels her service is more worthwhile when dealing with a man more handsome than usual. Slowly, she approaches the guest's bed and asks why he hasn't undressed yet. Removing the first piece of clothing, she urges the boy to hurry as she still has many clients to attend to tonight. Ignoring her, Zilu tells her to take a shower first. According to him, this woman already smells somewhat zombified. Before the game of the apocalypse begins, there are signs that some people will turn into these creatures. Finally, as the woman heads to the shower, he grabs the knife from his backpack and heads to the bathroom door. Inside, while the technique showers, she hears the man's footsteps approaching, so she starts to flaunt and offer her body to the client. But as soon as she turns off the shower, things start to go another way. When Zilu's alarm goes off at 7 p.m., the woman begins to transform on the spot, turning into a zombie in a painful mutation that makes her scream in pain and despair. Zilu opens the door and witnesses the scene. By now, the human has completely transformed and lunges at the boy. Keeping his cool, Zilu dodges the attack and watches as the hotel employee crashes into the floor on her own. In the end, she hits her head and dies instantly. Zilu, having nothing to do with it, waits for the system's circle to fill around him and welcomes him to the apocalypse game, which cannot be stopped, so players must fend for themselves however they can. Zombies in this world have sharp hearing but poor vision, only able to see moving objects. 80% of people were unlucky enough to become these monsters, and if anyone who remained human dies, that's it, no second chance. To enhance the user experience, the system just provided a game rule manual. 1. Killing zombies or other mutants allows you to level up and develop new attributes and skills. 2. Killing these creatures gives you a chance to receive an item, but this chance is very small, varying according to the player's luck attribute. As for the tutorial for higher levels, the system doesn't bother providing any information after all. No one is expected to get that far anyway. It is informed that there are many hidden locations in this game, so it's important for each player to pay attention to this. All modern human science will lose its offensive function, so players should not use these items to test their luck. At the current stage, all communication devices will be inactive and useless, but if anyone wants, they can keep their cell phone to play the snake game. If a person is bitten, they will turn into a zombie, but the blood of these monsters is not infectious. They are much stronger at night, and also level up then. In other words, it's wise for no player to fall behind. Finally, the system will contact those who survive the 7 days of the beginner's protection period. During this phase, players are encouraged to defeat as many zombies as they can as they are still at a low level. This game is full of unknown elements and anything is possible. That said, the system wishes all participants the best and hopes they enjoy the game. At that moment, the screen asks Zilu to enter the player's name. So he types Jia. From now on, he will be known by this name, and he hopes that all those who threaten him one day are prepared to face his revenge. Soon, the system congratulates Jia for being the first user to kill a zombie, which awarded him 1 experience point, 1 gold coin, a rise to level 2, and the title of First Blood in the global ranking. With the knife still in hand, the protagonist hears that a server announcement will come soon. This time, he celebrates having achieved this ranking title. For last time, he never had anything like this, even when he became a god of war, as the competition was already high and the difficulty level was bizarre. Soon an announcement is made. Congratulations, Jia, for becoming the first player to kill a zombie and obtaining the unique title of First Blood, along with several rewards. Other players, please learn something from him. Amidst this message, people were fleeing as best they could from the zombie apocalypse taking over the planet. Elsewhere in the city, a girl named Ji Yao complains that she didn't even have time to assimilate the game rules, but someone had already killed the first monster. Meanwhile, having already killed his first victim, a man named Hugo Ji is surprised that someone acted before him. The protagonist, now going by the name Jia, sits down to check his new attributes. Due to his global achievement, he gained 1,000 prestige, 1,000 gold, and epic rank talent that grants the player various combat styles, plus 4 points to distribute in his build. Besides, Jia believes his above-average attributes are due to the skills he learned in his past life. Prestige and gold will be very useful, as some equipment requires prestige to be used, and this attribute also provides special discounts in game stores. Undoubtedly, of course, the most important is the title, which gives +1 to each attribute, in addition to doubling the damage of the first attack after midnight each day. After assessing his advantages, the player returns to the zombie that provided him with the global title. Beside her, there was an item called the Meditation Necklace, which provided +1 mind and increased mind recovery by 10%. At that, Jiayi was sure his cheat was active, as right at the first kill, he gained a bronze rank item. To contain the citizen's excessive enthusiasm, the system insists he use the cheat reasonably, reminding him that he is being watched every step of the way. More restrained, Jiayi reflects that the zombies became stronger last night, so he will eliminate as many as he can to level up faster, starting with this pigsty where he is currently. Thus, Jiayi begins his journey as if it were a walk in the park, but a sound reminds the player that not everything will go as he expects. Without wasting time, he goes to the door where the noise was coming from, careful to maintain silence so as not to lose the element of surprise. Then he turns the doorknob and kicks the door open, facing another zombie. Observing the enemy, Jiayi remembers that humans retain some characteristics after they become creatures. As for this one, it seems he had been doing heavy manual labor as he has strength 12 and physique 13. Regardless as strong as the guy may be, Jiayi knows he's still a level 1 zombie, so nothing too serious. The zombie attacks him with its right arm, but the human backs away. As the monster strikes with its right arm, Jiayi ducks and plunges the knife into the opponent's neck, which tries to continue attacking even with the damage incurred. Jiayi keeps his face far enough away to not get hit, while he twists the knife in the enemy's body and finishes him off once and for all. With that, the system indicates that the player has just earned +1 experience point and +1 gold. Despite this, he regrets not being able to defeat this target with just one blow. Now he sees the item being dropped and discovers that it is a card with a 70% cooked steak, directly imported from New Eastland with a special sauce. When activated, it will be delivered at a perfect temperature for the user. Jiayi reflects that, being a card, this item is a normal resource. So far, this is good, as he would have had to spend 100 gold just to open the game store. Thus, although it is not a rare item, it is a good start. Speaking of the card, Jiayi accesses his inventory and clicks on the steak. Behind him, the body of the zombie remains motionless. While searching the deceased's belongings, the player finds a photo of him with a small child, likely his daughter. Because of a hammer in the bag, the boy presumes the zombie was some kind of furniture assembler or something of that sort. Then he heads to the next rooms in the hotel, busting door after door, using his new hammer to break the locks and speed up his XP race. However, upon entering one of these rooms, the boy is embarrassed by the scene he just stumbled upon. After all, it was simply a couple of zombies enjoying the beginning of the end of the world to practice love. Jiayi, no fool, aborts the mission and lets the lovebirds enjoy their afterlife in peace, since he had forgotten that this was a motel, not just any place. Moreover, he even pokes his head in to judge the zombies for doing this even after the mutation. And this was the cue for the male zombie to go all in on the human, who now has the perfect excuse to end the unexpected romance of the monsters. Jiayi argues that he wasn't practicing voyeurism. And even though this one is weaker than the previous zombie, the human is annoyed by the audacity of this undead, and punishes his arrogance with a hammer blow to the skull that spews red, followed by a painful stab in the eye that knocks the enemy down and ends his second life. Showing off his mag skills, Jiayi spins it in his hand before striking the woman's neck with a backward slash without even looking. With that, the player earns 2 more experience points and 2 more gold, which seems to be the standard for this game, at least in the early stages. This time, an item from each zombie appears on the ground, further convincing Jiayi that this cheat is working perfectly. In his past life, all he could get from killing a horde of mutants was like a bottle of water. Now he feels the stark contrast between having luck and lacking it. Being honest with himself, it's obvious that feeling lucky is way better, and he has no problem showing it. Speaking of items, he picks up 2 probe eyes, which allow the user to detect movement within a 10-meter radius. Once motion is detected, the system sends an alert to the player lasting up to 10 hours. Without wasting time, Jiayi activates the item. But not everyone in this motel is happy. The owner, for instance, storms up the stairs complaining about the ruckus the kid is making, especially since he's just some broke punk causing chaos in this dump. Worse yet, the man demands Jiayi kneel and call him Big Boss, or else he'll beat him to a pulp. Before Jiayi can even react, the owner takes a swing at him, but Jiayi effortlessly dodges, letting the man's body lurch forward. With that, it's time to use the knife that has proven so useful. Even after such a humiliating failure, the motel owner doesn't back down. He vows to beat the kid until he begs for mercy. However, his expression changes instantly when Jiayi reveals his sharp weapon. The boy calmly remarks that if it weren't so much trouble, he'd wait for the guy to turn into a zombie just to kill him again later. It's a shame though, Jiayi could easily wipe out dozens of monsters in an hour. But wasting time on this fool? Not worth it. so he plunges the knife into the man without hesitation, ensuring there's no waiting for infection. Standing over the man's lifeless body, Jia states that in the apocalypse, if you want respect, you need the power to back it up. And this guy, he's way too weak for the title he thought he had. Next, Jia knocks on the nearest door, pretending to be a plumber. At another, he claims he's there to fix the bed. Then he lies about delivering a package. After several failed attempts and hassles, he finally reaches a room where he hears zombie noises inside. He celebrates the chance to earn more XP. Without hesitation, he violently kicks the door open, revealing a mutant creature, a step above the average zombie with claws and a more formidable physique. Proceeding cautiously, Jia dodges the first attack and avoids the enemy's second strike as well. This monster is fast, Jia admits, but not fast enough to dodge the kick Jia lands in return. Executing the acrobatic move, the player positions himself for the next attack and drives his knife into the creature's neck, sending it crashing to the floor. The fight ends without much trouble. Recognizing that this was a tougher opponent, Jia eagerly approaches the dropped item, thrilled as he picks up a suspicious bottle labeled Fly Sky White Liquid. After this rewarding encounter, it's time to continue the hunt for more victims, and Jia doesn't spare a single drawer in his search. Later, he reaches room 201 and finds it to be the most intact room in the motel so far. Deciding to spend the night there, he sets up camp. Exhausted from the bloodbath, he tosses his outer clothes into the air and checks the system, realizing he still needs 6 points to level up to 3. Casually, he checks his phone and discovers it's almost 8 a.m., a fact he definitely wasn't expecting. This is a major issue because it means that in just 20 minutes he needs to kill 6 zombies if he wants to level up to 3. Therefore, he dashes out of the room where he was going to rest and reaches the reception area, where he notices a small sign that Jia is all too familiar with. After all, it reads that technique number 3 can always serve you. Considering there are 3 of these employees and Jia has already killed 2, only 1 remains. Thus, the boy pulls out his hammer, remembering that according to the game's rules, zombies are drawn to sound. He bangs the hammer against the wall in search of new monsters. Without delay, a monstrous noise emerges from a room. Jia heads there and discovers what appears to be a well-set living room, but crucially lacking zombies. Actually, the noise was coming from a hatch leading to the basement, and without a second thought, the player decides to search the area. Upon lifting the lid, he sees 2 zombies quickly ascending the stairs, but the top one fumbles and fails to hold on, thus tumbling onto the zombie right behind it. All that hard work for nothing, Jia thinks before jumping into the basement and driving his knife into the back of the female zombie, who, contrary to expectations, didn't die from the fall. Next, it's the turn of the one who caused the incident. As soon as Jia notices its charge, he stabs it in the player's favorite spot, the neck. With both hands, the human forcefully plunges the sharp weapon into the creature's jugular. As a reward for the new kills, he gains 2 experience points, meaning he still needs 4 more to level up. Although it has been very useful so far, Jia knows this knife is so dull it will soon be unusable, so he needs to find a decent weapon and quickly. As it happens, he notices a gleam in the corner of the room, like in a true RPG, when a valuable item is found. Indeed, it was a formidable piece of equipment, the horizontal sword of the Tang dynasty. Excited about his find, the player plans to eat his beefsteak using this weapon. Being a bronze-ranked item, this sword is 70 centimeters long, can easily pierce armor, and is extremely durable. Moreover, it grants +1 strength and reduces the enemy's defense by 10% during combat. For someone who was stuck with a dull knife, Jia knows he's found something particularly timely. Speaking of which, he opens his inventory and scrolls through the items he's acquired, but checking the time, he realizes he only has 10 minutes left to meet his XP goal. He rushes up the stairs to continue his journey. Upon opening the entrance door of the Love Hotel, Jia crosses his arms in a cocky pose and immediately faces several zombies that were outside. Tightening his grip, he sees this as an opportunity not to be missed. The zombies approach with their usual craving for flesh and at a speed that could panic anyone witnessing this danger. Causing a real commotion, they enter the hotel, or rather, they almost do, as the first 4 stumble at the entrance and fall to the ground ridiculously. At this moment, Jia feels he overestimated these low-level zombies from day one. In his past life, the young man got drunk and cried like a baby on the first day of the apocalypse game, allowing the zombies to level up to 2 on their own. However, with the sword of the Tang dynasty, he vows not to mess up this time, swiftly sweeping the monsters without mercy and completing his mission. As he does so, he looks back and sees the monsters slowly fallen under the weight of his blade, proving the undeniable quality of this weapon. With the killing, the man earns 4 experience points and 4 gold. Moreover, he now has the opportunity to reach level 3 as promised. From now on, if he wants to level up to 4, he needs 30 more points. However, the challenges are far from over, as right after finishing this fight, Yi faces another zombie rushing towards him, but this time it's a more intelligent creature. That is, supposedly more intelligent, because even though he hasn't moved a muscle, Yi ends up unintentionally piercing the damned creature's forehead with his sword, which met the blade like a moth to a flame and went down without a fuss. One way or another, the loot is guaranteed, and Yi doesn't make it hard to grab this free book. By the way, he notices it's a skill book, but sets it aside for now. His phone starts ringing, so the boy picks up the device and sees that the 8-hour alarm has just gone off. With this, he senses an approaching threat and leaps back as some powerful enemy has just destroyed the wall to make its presence known. Despite still being level 1, this zombie was visibly more developed than the previous ones and had stronger attributes. As night falls, this is expected to happen, so the system warns players to be very cautious about the time they leave their homes. From what Yi remembers, the zombies will reach the peak of their combat ability in just 1 minute, meaning he needs to finish this opponent within that time frame. After advancing a few steps and striking with his sword, the boy sees the blade stuck in the target's neck, who remains standing as if it hadn't suffered any damage. Yi tries to retrieve his sword from the monster, but fails. Seeing the danger the enemy poses at this distance and under these circumstances, the player decides to retreat without his main weapon in hand, preferring to rely on his hammer to end the fight as quickly as possible. Soon, the man hurls the tool towards the opponent, and just like the sword, it embeds in his head. Doing this, Yi runs towards the sword and pulls it with all of his strength, tearing it from the rival's neck and causing serious damage. Nonetheless, even though it has fallen to its knees, the zombie regains its posture, and with eyes red and thirsty for blood, it roars at the human and stays in the fight, promising still to be a formidable challenge. Once again, Yi doesn't underestimate the opponent and retreats to maintain distance. Now that he has his main weapon back, the human lands a powerful blow in the same region where the zombie was already wounded in the neck. This time, the monster does not resist and collapses heavily to the ground. Looking around at all the other zombies that were also dead, Yi notes that this superior monster reached the peak of its strength. If not for his past life experience, surely the boy would have run out of time, allowing this contest to drag on much longer. Finally, it's time to collect the items left by the deceased, as the journey ahead won't be easy. As it's 8 in the morning, all zombies have increased their attributes by 50%. For this reason, Yi collects the bodies to stack them at the door, as the noise he made defeating that superior mutant will soon fill the building with other enemies, so the player set up a barrier to contain any threat that might appear at any moment. Barricaded in room 203, Yi counts on his probe eye, which will give a red alert if any danger approaches. Should this happen, the user will be automatically awakened, no matter the state they are in. Breathing heavily from the tough challenge the last fight provided, the boy takes the opportunity for a respite to take a good bath and relax, along with the various items he obtained in this recent adventure. Besides 2 more probe eyes, there was a night ring and a liter of mineral water, plus a piece of Jingdu barbecue. In his past life, all these items would have been very difficult to find, and Yi can't believe they are simply available without demanding great effort. Undoubtedly, this is a cause for celebration for the experienced player who had such a rough time in his previous life. Finally, times have changed, and now he has just discovered an item he had never seen before, in this case, the ring. The night ring serves as camouflage by reducing your detection ability by 30%, in addition to increasing agility by +1. Without a second thought, the boy puts on the accessory, but soon his eyes turn to another item that caught his attention. It's the skill book he had previously set aside, which glowed intensely and seemed an invitation to be read at that moment. At this, the system congratulates Yi for being the first player to acquire this book, as in the Apocalypse game, participants can have unlimited abilities. Upon reading this, Yi already imagines that the sky is the limit, especially since such an item is almost impossible to drop. Normally, a player between levels 10 and 80 would only have 3 chances to obtain a random professional skill. The protagonist remembers a guy who was quite unlucky. On that occasion, he picked up 3 skills, but none were useful to him. In fact, many players from level 60 to 70 only have their professional ability, and the person known as the Skills God only had about 25 skills, and she was known in Yi's past life as the one with the most powers in the whole world. In his own case, Yi only had 10 skills, but even so, he had more than 90% of the players at that time. Unable to get this out of his head, the boy opens the book with a bit of fear, begging the gods for a bit of luck at this moment, because starting the game with a good skill will make his life much easier from here on out. Finally, when he finally opens the item, he looks shocked at what he has just acquired. It was the boomerang cut technique, which deals 120% damage relative to the user's strength attribute, and the weapon returns to his hand after being activated. If it hits the target on the return as well, the damage will be 80%, But if it encounters any obstacle on the way, there is a risk that the sword, or whatever it is, might not return to his hand. Upon reading this, Jiayi's eyes light up with excitement. After all, he has acquired a warrior ability that combines strength and multiple distance damage. It takes a while before he can use it again, but as soon as Jiayi further evolves his mind attribute, the usage interval will become increasingly shorter. At this, the system asks if the player wants to learn this ability. Without a shadow of a doubt, he presses the button to confirm and already wants to test it on some unsuspecting zombie in the middle of the street. However, the player ends up suffering the consequences of his lack of concern with other important factors. Upon checking his inventory with a hand on his belly, the guy activates his Jingdu barbecue to ease his hunger, along with everything else he was entitled to and had earned with his own sweat in this godforsaken game. By the way, he loved the taste of each dish and felt as if he were in a 5-star hotel. After the meal, not to lose the habits of the old world, he cleans the entire table and disposes of the leftovers. Then he heads to the bedroom window and reflects that if he wants revenge, he must take a different route than last time. Otherwise, he will fail. With this in mind, the man retrieves a pen from his inventory and writes down the classes Warrior and Mage on a piece of paper. In an attempt to evaluate the differences between the two, he notes that a warrior always gains 1 point in strength and 1 in physique upon leveling up, plus 2 additional points to distribute as desired, with subclasses like Tank focusing on physique and Berserker favoring strength. There are other examples, such as Assassin and Archer, which have some differences. As for the Mage, every time he levels up, he earns a point for mind and another for agility, in addition to the 2 points also left to the player's choice. If he decides to also focus on attributes like strength and physique, the Mage can blend magic with melee combat, for example. The chance of obtaining a hidden profession is 1 in 100, with the strongest being even rarer. One of them is called Phantom, but having managed to secure this class in his past life, Jiayi is confident it will be easy to obtain it again with a cheat. A hidden profession is so rare that only 1% of people manage to find one, and even fewer acquire those of higher and stronger ranks. Once players reach level 10, they can access the profession system and choose a gameplay path that fits the skills they desire for this class. Although it's a tough road, the reward is substantial. For instance, the Phantom is an elite assassin, with surreal speed and immense damage against single targets. Before the second profession change, each level up grants the Phantom 2 points in strength and agility, plus another 3 points for the player to distribute as desired. In his last life, if Jiayi hadn't unlocked the hidden profession Phantom, he certainly wouldn't have survived those 10 years. Those who reach this level always become gods of war, gods of magic, or the like. With all this at the tip of his pen, Jiayi lays out his status on paper and thinks about what he wants for life. Soon, he adds another 3 points to the strength attribute, but pauses to recall where he encountered the paladin profession last time. The boy even remembers it was with a diamond-ranked sword, but he can't quite remember where, so he regrets not having written these things down somewhere. Meanwhile, in an elegant house, a man is smashing everything in sight. Someone told him to calm down, but he can't manage to do so upon learning that Yo Jing-han has ruined his plans. Moreover, he wonders where that woman has disappeared to because, after what happened, he won't be able to send his materials to Lin Zilu on time. This was Lai Haobo, who blames all this on the Dan Apocalypse game, which should not have occurred at this moment. At his side was Haobo's personal butler, curiously named Butler Lai. The servant pleads with his boss to calm down, as several guards have already died or been injured in this game, and if the zombies attack, not a stone may be left standing. Ignoring Butler Lai, Haobo thinks he can mess with Ziluo by sending him straight to Daddy. In the mind of Butler Lai, the inner angel and devil debate. The angelic side wonders if it's wise to educate the young master this way, while the devilish side thinks the great master was right. If there's only one successor, the family will stop killing each other to compete for the top of the hierarchy. Regardless, Butler knows his master will suffer during the apocalypse with this personality. Meanwhile, Haobo can hardly wait for his Uncle Zhao. The employee asks what this talk is about, and the boss remembers that according to what his father said, the team of mercenary hunters will be after him. Once these guys have found Modu, Haobo wants them to go after those 2 bastards. For his part, Haobo wants to get his hands on Jing-han, dead or alive, all to leave Zilu desperate. Butler remembers that the team of mercenaries was trained from their youth by the young master, meaning they'll do exactly as he orders. Well aware of this, Haobo doesn't hide his delight at imagining his arch-rival losing his girlfriend in front of him. Meanwhile, Jiayi has just sneezed and feels that things are getting ugly for him as he grabs another tissue. Regardless, the boy jumps out of his bedroom window and exposes himself again to a world filled with zombies everywhere. As he adjusts his backpack, he cautiously surveys his surroundings, spots a target, and grips his sword. With that, he throws the weapon at a zombie, killing it and earning 1 more point of experience and another of gold. He then repeats the process and defeats another. After a few more times, he levels up to 4 and earns 1 attribute point. From now on, the player needs 40 EXP to reach the next level. Not wanting to stop there, Jia fully utilizes his new skill, and the boomerang cut just caused a real massacre at the location. And all the user managed to do after that was acknowledge how handy the skill came in. The only downside is that his mind power is still weak, which makes the cooldown of the boomerang cut quite slow. Regardless, the boy decides to stop there and collects the dropped items. Among them was a set of men's clothing, a bowl of chicken rice, and a precise watch. However, more interesting than all that, the system congratulates the player for obtaining a new attribute item. It was the Equipment Enhancement Scroll, a bronze rank item that can enhance equipment of the same rank. With this in hand, Jia knows he has obtained something truly useful. Without wasting time, he enhances his sword and increases its attributes. The first time, the scroll offers a 100% chance of success, but as the weapon's level increases, this percentage decreases. In the end, the player had the horizontal sword of the Tang Dynasty +1, which increases 1 point of the weapon's strength, removes 15% of the enemy's defense, and increases 10% of the power of continuous hits. With a smile of someone who is about to stir the pot with a Tang sword, the boy adds another point of strength to his attributes. But his streak of luck doesn't stop there. Jia also acquired the Hidden Mask, which gives the user the chance to hide his game nickname, level, and basic information for 30 minutes, and it can be used twice a day. Jia holds the item for a moment and scratches his head, then puts the equipment on his face and tests how it works. Having done that, he leans against a corner and decides he'll take a rest to get back to work later. If he reaches level 5 tonight, the man decides he'll try his luck in a dungeon. The dungeons of the Apocalypse game are located within portals scattered throughout the cities and are a way for players to gain experience, equipment, and general items. As soon as you enter a portal, you're teleported to a waiting room where you can choose which dungeon you want to challenge. Besides the common ones, there are individual dungeons which are rarer and yield better items. Regardless, Jia changes his mind and decides to head to Lai Shi village. So he packs his items in his backpack and puts on the precise watch he had won, then starts walking through streets filled with zombies. Sometime later, with his sword in hand, the player reaches a door locked with a padlock and doesn't think twice before opening it with his blade and exploring the premises. It was an ironically cozy and well-decorated place, resembling a home or a small family restaurant. However, apart from the inviting environment, the chairs scattered on the floor were a trail leading to a blood-stained door. Smelling XP, Jia cracks open the door and sees a monstrous hand attacking his body. On reflex, he cuts off the creature's limb with his enhanced blade and takes a defensive stance to deal with whatever comes next. Suddenly, a shriek from behind catches his attention. That shrill scream penetrated the player's mind in such a way as to activate his survival instinct in the most primitive manner. Yet, for a second, those hands coming through one of the doors seemed more lost than decisively intent on taking a life. Nevertheless, when the zombie destroys the door and reveals itself fully, the alert signal is turned on again. Then Jia slashes the beast's neck with a bored expression. Having done that, the dead was dead again, and the path seemed clear up to a portrait that caught the protagonist's attention. Slowly, he approaches the object and notices is a classic family photo, where the zombie he just downed is undoubtedly the father. Once again, Jia encounters this type of unwanted memory, reminding him that these creatures were once people just like him. Obviously, this leaves a bitter taste in the player's mouth, who clenches his teeth hard, but soon convinces himself that if he's going to feel sorry for every zombie he kills in this game, then it's better not to get out of bed at all. Next, after slicing open a random monster in Family Man's neck, it's time to ease the hunger. Since everything Jia has in his inventory is delicious, he decides to close his eyes and choose lunch at random. In the end, it seems he opted to choose several times in a row. With the hunger of 7 bricklayers, the man indulges in the feast and leaves nothing left over. Afterward, he takes a moment on the couch and checks details on his cell phone. Checking the GPS, he finds himself on Pingshan Road, so if he walks east by late afternoon, he should soon reach his destination. Thinking about this, the guy stretches and heads on his way. But before he leaves, he hears a noise nearby. Having entertained himself too much with lunch, he had neglected the little mice. Thus, he positions himself beside the door and avoids making any noise. Outside, people were talking that they heard footsteps just now, meaning whoever was inside is still there. In the end, it was Gugo Ji, Ji Yao, and another boy unknown until then, waiting for Jia Yi to leave the place, because they smelled the food coming from inside and are sure someone has those gained food cards that make the feast appear. At the same time, Jia Yi leans out a window. Yahello thinks it's ugly to steal from others, but Goji already has the whole plan in mind. They'll threaten the guy to hand over the food. If he doesn't comply, he'll be attacked. Upon hearing this, the girl couldn't hide her moral concern about such behavior, while Jia sneaked up behind her through the bushes. According to the protagonist, they were 3 little mice that had just crossed his path. The third one was named Ji and was Yo's brother. He claimed that the intruder had smashed their home's door and didn't deserve much empathy, which she eventually agreed with. Always acting timidly, the girl reflected that she and her brother had fled in terror when their father turned into a zombie and they never took anything from the house. Besides, they hadn't eaten since yesterday, so something had to be done. Driven by hunger, the girl completely changed her mind and joined her partner's plan. It was time to take the food from that man. However, as soon as she finished her sentence, a stream of blood hit her glasses. It was that man, the one they were about to rob, slashing Gugoji's back with a Chinese sword. Instantly, the woman panicked and began to scream as the man fell. Jia Yi, by his own account, wanted to conserve energy, but since he couldn't let the noisy group attract more zombies, he decided to kill them all. With a boomerang slice, he positioned his blade behind the enemies. On the way there, the sword caught the girl's braids. On its return, it struck her brother, who was hastily fleeing the scene. Spinning in the air and spreading the blood, the Tang Dynasty sword returned to its bearer's hand, while the young dead bodies illustrated the grim scene. Speaking of one of them, Jia Yi turned his face towards Jikai Qi. The despicable brother had simply run off and left his own sister behind. Definitely, that guy was dead weight on Earth, and now literally so. Although he had ended everyone's lives, Jia Yi thought they should be thankful for being eliminated instantly, as it was far better than becoming a zombie, to say the least. For his good deed, the protagonist felt he deserved a citizenship medal. Saying this, Jia Yi left the scene, leaving behind the blood of the Ji family, which by then had become history. By late afternoon, the streets were increasingly filled with these undead who roamed freely through the area, and some were even daring to climb buildings to reach human flesh despite their poor physical condition. However, not everyone there was dead. For instance, among a couple of humans nearby, the woman looked out the window and alerted the man that a superhero was coming their way. Understandably, the man didn't believe her, so she asked him to see for himself. On the street, there was a masked man sweeping through each zombie that appeared in front of him. However, it was impossible to see his status, which made the situation a bit odd. Regardless, the woman didn't care and wanted to scream for help, but the man didn't want to draw the zombies' attention to where they were hiding. By the way, if this hero was hiding his information, maybe he wasn't too keen on saving others. Hearing this, the woman recognized that her husband was very clever, but she had another plan in mind, using a personal beautification item. She leaned out the window and called out to the citizen on the street, asking to be saved by him. Completely ignoring the damsel in distress's words, Jia Yi went to the items that dropped from the massacre and collected them all. From there, the woman completely lost it and yelled that the kid was trash because she had over 30,000 fans and all that jazz. Not only that, she prepared a plant pot to make the guy pay. As she threw the pot out the window, it fell directly towards Jia Yi's head, who hadn't noticed what was happening until that moment. When he realized a bomb was coming, he performed a foot maneuver and dodged the projectile, which smashed to the ground. As if that weren't enough, the lady had the audacity to pretend it had nothing to do with her, and continued asking for help from the tough guy, arguing that she was scared of the zombie crowd. By the way, if the boys saved the princess, she said she was willing to hold the hero's hand, a unique opportunity for sure. In her mind, Jia Yi was hopelessly attracted and wouldn't miss the chance to snatch a piece of this unparalleled beauty. Anyway, the supposed hero with the weird mask opened his menu and collected a raw meat stuffed with zombie virus, a perfect bait to attract these creatures within 100 meters. In a few minutes, this place would be swarming with monsters. Then the boy threw the meat into the beautiful lady's window. She didn't know what kind of meat it was, so she complained that the guy was trying to feed her like a dog, besides questioning whether the man didn't understand human language. Having said that, disturbing sounds began to emerge in the room, increasing in volume. Soon, a horde of zombies invaded the lady's door. Subsequently, we could see that the blood of this esteemed damsel had just sprayed. On the floor, while the red spread, the woman's cell phone was on. Not only that, but it was in the middle of a live stream where her fans, those who understood the context, could say goodbye to the sub-celebrity live. Walking calmly after taking another human being to the realm of God, Jia Yi reflected that this is the first lesson learned in the apocalypse. Know what you're capable of and never, under any circumstances, ask for help from strangers. With this teaching running through his mind, the young player continued on his way through the streets, displaying enviable tranquility. Later, upon reaching the Modu gym, Jia Yi arrived at his destination after this long walk. There were 2 hours left until nightfall. The the perfect time for his intention. After all, in this gym, there must be a silver rank wild vault with quite useful items, and the boy was after that. In the game settings of the apocalypse, there are markings on the map indicating the location of important places, whether dungeons, hidden merchants, or, as in this case, a wild vault. This type of vault drops in random places and can be opened by anyone. On the other hand, the boss vault only appears when you kill the local boss, and the items are much more valuable. But since it's very hard to find, Jiayi is now focusing on the wild vault, which gives silver rank items that can greatly improve his performance in the game. Thus, the protagonist stormed the gym and received the following mission from the system: fight 100 alone. Without changing his expression at the number of enemies he had to face, Jiayi read the mission description and reflected that most of the zombies were currently at level 2. As he walked through the structure, the man observed that it was a very large place. His initial intention was to sneak past the zombies, grab the vault, and run, but now that this mission had been given, the plan would have to change. Moreover, he wondered if there was any kind of punishment if he didn't accept this mission. The system responded that he didn't need to worry because the cheat system was to make him enjoy the game comfortably, not to get stressed out for nothing. Moreover, if he didn't want to complete this objective, Jiayi would receive 100 gold as a form of comfort. Upon reading this, the player plunged his sword into a lock that secured a door. Inside, zombies slowly approached, so Jiayi announced that it was time to get to work, raising the sole of his foot to boost his charge. The boy plunged his sword into the opponent's throat. But it didn't stop there. Next, Jiayi drew his hammer and delivered a powerful blow to the monster's face, in a bloodbath so intense that even a basketball that had nothing to do with it got splattered. After killing the adversary, Jiayi was amused by the fact that he had turned into a zombie while playing basketball. Finally, the sound of an item appearing was now more important, so the boy followed the drop box manifesting next to the dead zombie. Jiayi pushed the corpse with his foot and discovered that there was a key underneath it. As for the item, it was a super flashbang, a flash grenade that momentarily blinds you depending on your sensitivity to light, of course. Particularly, the protagonist liked this grenade a lot, and he already imagined using it in Laishi village. Soon, he stored the item in his backpack and noticed that the key that had been under the zombie was the master key, which probably would open all the doors in the gym. With this, he would no longer need to break down doors and provoke the arrival of more zombies with excessive noise. Finally, Jiayi continued on his way and placed his face in a crack that had opened in a door, where inside there were many, many zombies. Jiayi entered the room silently and managed not to attract the fury of the monsters. He crawled under the ping pong table and counted a total of 17 monsters there. The attributes of these zombies were similar to his, so a normal person would have to use all their power to kill just one of them. Anyway, with his skills, Jiayi presumed he would get out of this without major problems. He noticed that the door to the ping pong hall was closed, which meant that if he could act without making too much noise, no other horde of these creatures would arrive. With just a little left to level up, the boy planned to kill 2 zombies to level up at once. Then, when he reached level 5, he thought of a strategy to deal with the rest. Thinking this, he looked directly at his first victim and drew his sword. With a well-placed blow to the nape, the first obstacle had just been overcome. However, the sound of a zombie's death immediately alerted the others, provoking the fury of all the mutants in the hall. Instinctively, they rushed towards the human in search of flesh. This time, Jiayi found himself facing a number of zombies he had never encountered before, so it wouldn't be a simple challenge. Despite this, Jiayi shows no signs of nervousness, only focus on the fight. As the monsters approach, he stands still in a defensive posture. When 2 zombies enter his range, he slices at their knees and positions himself for an escape, jumping between the 2 foes and positioning himself against the rest of the zombies. Next, he strikes one squarely on the neck. With that, he levels up to 5 and now needs 100 experience points to reach level 6. Taking advantage of the fight's demands, the player adds a point to his agility attributes and returns to combat. The mutant creatures keep coming around the human. One attacks from behind, however. Jiayi spins his body with a kick and knocks down the attacker. Meanwhile, a small crack opens in the door leading to the ping pong room. In fact, it was a human spying on the situation from outside. Noticing what's happening, he curses everything under the sun, since a more unlucky guy has yet to be born. Inside the hall, the player continues to shoot the zombies with tremendous ease. Then, the unknown man begins to consider that this guy must have a lot of resources. Shortly after, the guy was sitting quietly, having decided just to wait for the man to die, as only then will he have a chance to steal his items. Or rather, he changes his mind and decides to take more drastic action. Since the sword player is going to die anyway, the man wants to do him a favor and speed up this inevitable end. and this will happen when several zombies are attracted to this same hall. Inside, Jia faces another monster that stands in his way. What he most feared happened. The noise caused by the fight is attracting more and more enemies. Speaking of which, a racket could be heard from outside the room. The door was so battered that cracks could be seen in it. Suddenly, a silence takes over the room. Jia begins to worry about how much this door can hold the monsters. After having killed this wave of enemies, he feels he should retreat, so he begins to react before something goes wrong. However, more zombies pile on him, forcing the player to improvise. Always using his feet masterfully, Jia takes a leap that makes the opponents fall to the ground by themselves. He positions himself again for the fight, even though he has a frightening amount of creatures around him. As some pursue the human, he sees no alternative but to fight. In this, he thrusts his sword into the heads of 3 zombies at once, like a skewer of spoiled meat. Having done this, the boy sits and feels the sweat dripping down his forehead as fatigue begins to hit harder after so much fighting. To counteract this, Jia opens his menu, where he gets an energy potion that recovers 20% of this status immediately. Besides, it recovers another 5% of his energy every minute, for a total of 5 minutes of effect. After using this potion, Jia can only use it again in 30 minutes, but he has no choice but to take the risk. Soon, with his strength restored, he launches the boomerang cut and knocks down another zombie in front of him, giving another loot to the player. But this time, it was a more sophisticated box than normal. As he's in this predicament, Jia approaches to see what kind of item he has gained in this bloodbath and opens the special box. Inside it was the Thorn Bracelet, which increases the mind attribute by +1 and has a special ability that summons thorns from the ground, although it can only be used once a day. Jia looks at that item as if he were a child, and once again he tastes the luck crossing his path. Without wasting time, the man puts on the bracelet. At the same time, more zombies approach the human, but this time seeing the arrival of the monsters, he feels that this is the opportunity to test his new skill. Without anything to do with it, the zombies run towards the player and accumulate more and more. Then Jia takes momentum and leaps that throws him over the horde. Still in the air, the player activates the Thorn Bracelet and causes a true chaos in that improvised battlefield as the thorns emerge from the ground and massacre the zombies in front of them. Witnessing the destructive power of this ability, Jia considers that this type of spell must be as strong as that of a level 20 wizard. Another zombie attacks from behind, but instead of this forcing the player to react quickly as always happened, the thorns do the dirty work and keep the user intact. Looking around, he sees the massive amount of monsters that were being annihilated by this potent technique. After that, the system notifies the player of each death he caused in this conflict, along with the XP points he gained, plus a note about the skill sea of thorns developing with use time. Excited with this magnificent power, Jia collects the loot and checks the information of an item he picked up. It is a launcher that can shoot basically any projectile that fits in the weapon, but this shot does not exceed a distance of 30 meters. Besides this item, he picked up the wind hunting boots, which in addition to giving a bonus of +1 in physical and agility, evoke the wind, reduce the sound of footsteps, and have a skill that increases movement speed by 20% for 10 seconds, which can be used once an hour. Upon reading the description, Jia decides to wear the boots and reflects that normal players would never be able to reach these attributes he now has if they do not change their profession. For his part, he is sure that once he changes profession, he will be with double the status of someone with the same level. Putting that aside, the fight is not yet over. Several zombies are still lurking and dragging themselves behind the human. In this, Jia picks up another meat infested with the zombie virus and puts it inside his launcher. The boy presses the trigger and shoots the meat over the horde, which immediately runs towards the projectile and leaves the player in peace for now. Given this, Jia activates the skill of his boots and prepares to put it into practice. As the zombies struggle to get a piece of that succulent virus-infected meat, the boy crosses the hall with increased speed and silenced steps. After escaping, he takes a short break and glances at the clock. In 1 hour, it will be 8 p.m., when the zombies will be much stronger. After fighting so much today, considering the buff that the monsters will receive soon, Jia decides to rest tonight and think about what to do from tomorrow. In search of some place where he can lodge in the gym, the player tries to open a door, but since it was locked, he puts his hand in his pocket to pull out the master key and place it in the lock. However, before opening, he wonders why this door is locked in the first place. Considering that the apocalypse always arrives at 7 p.m., at a time when the gym is usually not locked. And since the infirmary is only locked after the workers leave, this door should be locked only after the apocalypse arrives. Finally, Jia puts the key back in the lock and opens the infirmary, just hoping that the person who might be inside does not do anything stupid. Slowly, he goes inside, all to avoid as much noise as possible. Soon, he reaches a door and thinks about opening it, however. Someone places a sword on his neck, wanting to know who Jia Yi is and how he has the key to the infirmary. For his part, the protagonist recognizes that the guy seems shrewd, but by holding the sword from his hand, the protagonist states that the guy messed with the wrong guy and disarms him. Before the weapon could fall, Jia Yi places his foot so that it makes the hilt bounce back up. In that movement, he grabs the weapon and twists the opponent's arm back, plus placing a cloth to prevent him from screaming. Having done that, Jia Yi opens the inventory and takes out a fabric with the following description: apocalypse item he made when he had nothing to do. Then the boy announces that he will turn on the lights. A doctor warns that the place will be full of zombies if the guy does that, but Jia Yi had already covered all the light passages outside, so he repeats the order. Thus, the woman does as commanded. With the environment lit, Jia Yi looks around and notices that there were several people inside. The man who met with the boy earlier recognizes his face. It was the guy he tried to throw several zombies on top of. He was supposed to have died, but the shot backfired. By the way, Jia Yi approaches and says that he crossed paths with several people who had that same arrogant look at him, even though they were weak. Having said that, the protagonist gives another lesson about the apocalypse. Never look at people with resentful eyes, otherwise, you die. As he says this, the teacher runs his sword across his student's neck. Realizing that the people saw the whole scene and are terrified, Jia Yi turns again to the man he killed and shows that he had a weapon up his sleeve, meaning it was kill or be killed. In the end, the assassin assures that he is a great person. To not end up with the same fate as his colleague, everyone agrees completely that Jia Yi is the best person in the world, an angel on earth, the Chinese Mahatma Gandhi. Inside, of course, they were all begging not to die. Scratching his head, Jia Yi explains that he was attacked first, as everyone saw, so he was forced to do this. Moreover, the guy makes it clear that he's a cool guy, it's just people not doing any crazy stuff and everything will be fine. Finally, after hearing what was said, the supposed doctor approaches and says that the guy deserved it, as everyone saw that he started the fight. She asks if the rest of the people agree, and everyone nods their heads. Thus, Jia Yi is relieved and likes what he hears, then puts his hands in his pockets and takes a walk around the infirmary. While people tremble with fear, he feels that if he had fought in the morning in that ping pong hall, he would surely have completed the mission, as he would be with full energy. Finally, he sits down a bit and asks the folks to take care of the corpse and the bloodstains. Without contesting, the four agree completely in the blink of an eye. Soon, the group's joint work was cleaning up the mess that had been left. Somehow, Jia Yi feels that he has seen this doctor somewhere. According to the status, her name is Zhang Yixu, and she is at level 0. Upon reading that name, the protagonist remembers who she is. At the end of his previous life, he met this person at some point, and she already had the hidden profession called God's Doctor. On that day, the boy was seeking treatment for his wound after hearing about a doctor in the region. Su even let the guy in, but warned him up front that if the scar involved the soul, there was no cure. Whenever he was severely wounded, Jia Yi always sought out this doctor. Somehow, he knew that despite being a highly respected and demanded profession within the apocalypse game, she could suffer at the hands of others if she didn't learn to fend for herself. Always, people were panicked by the chaos, but Su seemed to maintain a strange calm amidst the madness. Thinking about it now, Jia Yi concluded that fate was almost magical, as he had met someone familiar on just the second day of the apocalypse. Not to mention finding a group with a doctor, a nurse, and 2 workers. Setting that aside, a sound was heard from outside. The 4 people who had been no longer once again panicked, but braced themselves for whatever came their way. Soon, the door began to be mercilessly smashed, assuring that it would fall at any moment. Knowing this well, the quartet began to fear for their lives even more. On the other hand, Jia Yi seemed uninterested. He noticed that it just struck 8 p.m., so he grabbed some food cards and summoned a banquet on the table. As if nothing were happening, he wolfed down the food without any embarrassment. The people there, probably having not eaten for some time, couldn't ignore the smell of the meal. Similarly, Su tried to control her impulses at the moment. Bravely, she asked if her group could have some of the food. At that moment, Jia Yi was pleased that the doctor had taken the bait. He said yes, of course, but only if they helped with a small thing he needed. The nurse trembled with fear, as she had just seen this guy kill another in cold blood. Still, Su wanted to know what the condition was. For a moment, she thought the man would want indecent favors, but, in fact, he handed over a list of medications and asked the doctor to search for them. Disbelieving, she asked if that was really all, but as he hinted he could ask for something more, the doctor dropped the subject and accepted the terms easily. After talking with the women, Jia approached the men and made a similar proposal. He would leave tomorrow at 6 a.m. If the guys did what he wanted, they would get food. Since the men already had some necessary tools, Jia gifted the two with some food cards. This was a way to show good faith. Finally, the boy went to sleep and hoped the workers had done a good job by morning. With that, he left the place and paused for a moment to check the things he had gotten today. Besides that, he read about the mission Fight 100 alone. So far, he had defeated 45. If he completed the objective, the man would earn a random normal cheat and a bronze rank piece of equipment, as long as he did this within 24 hours from the start of the mission. With still 6 hours left, the boy took the opportunity to relax in bed and spend the night to replenish his energies. The next morning, he returned to the infirmary, where everyone was working hard to do what Jia had agreed with them. With a smile on his face, the boy acknowledged that the people had done well. Although the nurse was so hungry and exhausted that she was about to have a fit in the corner of the room. In any case, the unknown intruder kept his word and gifted the workers with a food card each. In the background, Sue watched the scene with a smile on her face. After all, she thought this guy was going to kill everyone, so much so that she had even thought of a plan to escape from this place. Honestly, she could never have expected that the guy would keep his promise. In the end, it seems he wasn't as ruthless as she thought. By the way, now with what he had asked for in hand, the strange boy reaffirmed that the people had earned it, so received the reward easily. Embarrassed, Sue asked how to use these cards. Upon hearing these words, Jia couldn't hide his surprise, but soon remembered that the apocalypse is the kind of game that teaches nothing to the novices about the mechanics, so much so that he himself spent days just learning to open the inventory. Not wanting to leave the people in the lurch, the protagonist prepared to teach how to use the item. With a simple gesture, he pressed the Use card option, and there it was, the meal ready on the table. Stu thanked him for the valuable lesson from this true master. Then everyone did the same and ate like they had never eaten before in their lives. For his part, Jia just chilled in a corner, sipping a Coke and thinking it would be great to maintain a good relationship with Sue in this life too, because she is an important piece and will be needed in the future. Finally, it was already noon and the boy knew he was well past the time he had planned to leave. With that, he turned off the lights and covered all the light exits. From now on, all the zombies in the gym had to die by his hand. He prepared to leave, but before, he asked the doctor not to forget the things he had said. She repeated some silly words about being careful outside, things everyone already knew. In any case, Jia asked her to worry about herself first, then he opened the door and left. Outside, dozens of zombies were gathered in the corridor. Without a second thought, the player dove into the enemy crowd and began the fight by killing his first victim, but keeping as quiet as possible to not attract the entire swarm at once. Then he repeated the movements and took down other monsters along the way, until there were none left around. In another corner of the gym, the boy continued his journey, until he reached a bathroom. At the sight of what was in front of his eyes, the poor guy wondered if it was fashionable for zombies to walk around without pants. Hearing this, a zombie doing its business turned around. At that moment, there was a really weird and messed up atmosphere between the two. To avenge the interruption by the human, the zombie attacked, but tripped over the next pair of lowered pants and fell face down on the floor. From that moment, the deafening silence in that bathroom became even more tense, so much so that Jia cracked a wry smile at how awkward he felt. Facing the subdued zombie with his sword in hand, Jia questioned whether they should fight because if the monster didn't want to, it would be much more boring. Finally, since the opponent wasn't in the mood to offer resistance, the human slashed its neck and resolved the situation once and for all. Having done that, he took a look at the corpse and decided it would be a good idea to remove the creature's eye and keep it. Leaving the bathroom, the boy reflected that the chance of surviving this gym was very low because the people who frequented this place and turned into zombies usually had a good physique. Speaking of which, he heard a sound coming from the women's bathroom and approached with curiosity. At the same time, he convinced himself that there was no one inside out of sheer fright. Despite the dire situation he was in, the young man simply couldn't invade the women's bathroom, as if it were morally wrong. Given the circumstances, he knew it was ridiculous to act like this, so he forced himself to enter, even with his eyes closed and sweating like a pig. Inside, he looked from one side to the other, trying to find the source of the sound. As he approached the stall, he imagined there were two zombies in one of the cubicles. Then, slowly he opened the door with his sword, and there was a mutant couple doing only God knows what. In Jia's opinion, the two were making love, which was enough to make his jaw drop as far as it could go. The monsters, of course, responded as usual, growling at the human and wanting to devour him. Jia, having vast experience in dodging attacks of this type, escaped the blow once again, until the female zombie slipped on a can on the floor, stumbled back, and the two, fell together onto the tip of the boy's sword. With that, even though he didn't understand how that had happened, Jiayi just earned 4 more experience points and 5 gold. Whatever that was, the protagonist put his hand in his pocket. Now, he took photos and videos of the undead lovebirds, intrigued by the dam's ability to have the strangest hobbies for someone who was supposed to be dead already. By the way, carefully looking at one of the photos, Jiayi began to think it was that famous zombie couple. According to his previous experience, Jiayi encountered the zombie couple for the first time in the gym, and they never left the place. At that time, the two became so strong that if they fought together against a war god or the zombie king, they would certainly give a lot of trouble. Now they really didn't have the same luck and turned into pace on the 3rd day of the game. Finally, the boy took a look at the dropped item and saw that it was a fusion crystal, capable of merging 2 bronze rank equipments to create a new one, evolving it to the silver rank. With a broad smile, the boy saw that this item would be quite useful. Then he left the women's bathroom. But another sound interrupted his walk at the same moment. With his sword raised, the man retraced a few inches in silence and peeked into the stall from where the sound came. However, this time it wasn't an enemy, but a loot box just lying around. According to Jiayi, it's the wild chest bronze rank. By detecting this rare item first, the player gains 10 prestige points from the system. If he wants to open the chest, he needs to give the order and wait the 30-second countdown. And that's what he does. Patiently, with his hand on the item, the young man waits for the chest to open and is rewarded with a kind of green apple. Obviously, Jiayi hopes that this item will boost his strength or agility until he begins to read the description. This is the physical fruit. After consumed, it grants a +2 bonus to the user's physique permanently. However, if it is shared with another person, each will gain 1 point of this attribute. In any case, even though he wanted to increase those other attributes, Jiayi couldn't complain about this item. Without delay, the man washes the apple in the sink and takes the first bite. Having done that, his eye opens wildly, but not because of the presence of dubious substances in the food. On the contrary, that fruit was so delicious that the guy could hardly believe that things from the apocalypse could taste better than in normal life. Be that as it may, the player eats the apple and gains +2 physique. Next, it was time to take a look at the other item he had gotten. Now it's a card called Thick Carpet. Honestly, as he continued his journey, Jiayi didn't expect to find the things he had been finding in this crazy gym. Anyway, he couldn't waste any more time and needed to get back to the hunt. There he was again, facing dozens of zombies staring at him with an uncontrollable desire to consume his flesh. As expected, Jiayi was attacked by the horde. The massive monsters charged towards him with nothing to lose, yet Jiayi not only remained calm but also managed to smile, believing that this place wouldn't attract any more zombies. Following that, a new round of slaughter began with the protagonist's sword swinging through the neck of each creature present. One by one, they fell under the weight of the player's blade until he leveled up to level 6. As the bodies of the zombies piled up around the gym, Jiayi was a machine, gaining XP and loot. With his cheat system activated, each fallen enemy yielded a different item for the boy. Speaking of which, once he acquired a bronze item, he decided to pause and check the mission status, which showed 38 zombies left to reach the 100 he needed to defeat. He then allocated the point he earned into strength and pursued the bronze item indicated by the system. It was the lion's bracelet, granting a +1 bonus to strength and physique. Additionally, the wearer's attacks had a 10% chance of intimidating the target for a second. When intimidated, the enemy loses some coordination and any skills they are using are interrupted. Besides the item's description, Jiayi read that a helmet and a mask can be worn on the head simultaneously, but only one will have its effect activated if this happens. Only jewels and accessories can be equipped on the neck. The torso can only wear armors, cloaks, and the like, while the legs can wear pants and a pair of shoes. On the arm, you can wear bracelets, rings, and the like. No matter how many items you have, only one from each body part will function, so you must choose according to your needs. Finally aware of the situation, Jiayi equipped the bracelets. After that, he continued walking inside the gym, sipping his coke through a straw to stay in shape. Suddenly, his eyes were drawn to a particular scene. Corpses everywhere, but this time of humans. Jiayi knew that a normal zombie doesn't have the ability to cause this sort of thing, since they only manage to bite the victim and turn them into one of them, unless the zombies go berserk and decide to eat the individual's brain. Now, as for a scene like this, only 2 types could cause it, and one of them was the zombie boss. This type of monster is much stronger than a zombie of the same level, often turning humans into fodder. Even if there are no humans around, it's no problem. They eat others of their kind to stave off hunger. The second type capable of causing such havoc is the mutant beast. The chance is small, but the stronger the beast, the easier it is to zombify. For the weaker ones like mosquitoes, only 1 in a million or maybe 10 million could successfully zombify. Zombified animals like humans prefer to devour human brains, but the difference is that they don't spare other zombies if it comes to it. And speaking of which, Jiayi took a look at a corpse and noticed the mark of small claws on the face, likely from a zombie cat. He particularly hates these cats more than anything because they have a high level of hearing and sensitivity, meaning they always know if something is lurking. Knowing this, the boy walks as cautiously as he can. At the same time, he tries to figure out whether this cat intends to attack stealthily or will simply emerge for a direct confrontation. For this, he needs to know where the animal is because only then will he have the advantage in this encounter. Suddenly, something catches the player's attention. When he realizes it without having had the chance to discover the enemy's location, Jiayi is attacked by the animal but manages to dodge at the last moment to avoid having his neck sliced. After the initial assault, the enemy retreats briefly. This zombie cat is a bronze rank boss and should not be underestimated. Despite its size, it has 21 strength, one more than Jiayi. Additionally, it has the shadow attack skill, capable of increasing its speed by 30%, increasing its damage to 120% and reducing the damage it takes by 50%, as well as causing bleeding that slows the target's recovery. Analyzing the opponent's status, a human player needs to be vigilant at all times if he doesn't want to meet his demise. To prevent this, he thinks of an effective strategy against this species and concludes that only his combat experience can defeat this cat. Having said that, the system announces that Jiayi has been placed on the mission Kill the Zombie Cat. Before becoming a monster, this street cat with a special talent used to visit the 3rd floor of the gym because some people always fed it. After the apocalypse game began, the kitty was bitten by a zombie and became infected. From then on, it started killing on the same day, causing suffering to those humans who had been feeding it just a day ago. Regarding the mission reward, Jiayi would earn 100 prestige, 200 gold, 100 XP, and a bronze rank item. However, the system soon announces that the mission has been updated to Ungrateful Zombie Cat, leaving the player baffled. On the game screen, there was the number 100%. Now the reward increased to 500 gold and 300 XP besides the rest that remains. With this given, Jiayi wonders if this is really the game he knows because he used to be deceived multiple times by the system in his past life. At that time, the difficulty of the missions was practically impossible, and if you failed, the punishment was huge. For normal players with a 1% drop rate, any reward was great. However, at the beginning of the game, it was common for a level 9 boss to appear, the type that you could only defeat with a dozen other people. Regarding the reward, it was something around 50 gold, for example. In other words, thousands of times worse than it is today. This pathetic mission, with a hefty reward and no punishment, is now the reality seen by the player who doesn't think twice before accepting it. Thus, he finally positions himself against the kitten, which despite its frightening appearance, now licks its paw in a gesture that is relatively cute. According to his past experience, when faced with a boss's provocation, Jiayi remembers that striking first is certain doom, so the scheme is to make the enemy advance before him. With this in mind, the human sits on the ground and leaves the cat puzzled. Not only that, the guy simply opens a manga to read on his cell phone and starts to laugh, leaving the cat terribly annoyed. The animal threatens to advance in the face of such provocation and positions its paws in a combat stance. When it finally leaps towards the man, its shadow attack skill is activated. I don't know if I'm crazy, but it seems that the cat, in the midst of its charge, ended up saying, "Die, human." Then it strikes with its sharp claws, almost taking the opponent to the grave. However, Jiayi had a trick up his sleeve, and that trick is his faithful Tang Dynasty sword. When the cat returns from its attack, it doesn't give the opponent a chance to think and goes back on the offensive immediately. Using his usual capability, Jiayi maintains his dodge and takes no damage. With great speed, he manages to position himself behind the cat and raises his sword for the fatal blow. However, to clear up any doubt once and for all, the animal really speaks as it escapes the blade's stroke. "Cunning human, I never thought you'd correctly predict your movement." Confused, Jiayi repositions his weapon for whatever comes next. When the cat approaches again, he unleashes a strike that cuts off the claws on the right paw of the target. The cat didn't expect this, and an almost human expression of apprehension takes over the face of the animal. Because of this injury, the zombie promises it won't forgive the human. According to Jiayi, he cut off all the cat's claws, so he wants to see if the animal is still capable of attacking. In turn, the zombie doesn't give up and releases its secret skill, Feline Stare. Immediately, its eyes assume an even more intimidating stance, while Jiayi realizes he's being thrown into an illusion. Without delay, the human finds himself in a kind of nightmare, where the cat is a gigantic and terrifying monster. However, despite the gruesome appearance, Jiayi has 10 years of experience with the apocalypse, and it won't be a mere zombie horde dungeon that will scare him. That said, he calls the cat weak. Upon hearing that, barely able to believe it, the cat retreats in its monstrous appearance and returns to its normal zombie-fied cat traits. Subsequently, the zombie is thrown out of its own illusion, as if broken by the determination of its enemy. In light of more damage suffered, the animal begins to show visible signs of wear. Not being foolish, the feline tries to escape as quickly as possible. But as it can't let its reward flee on 4 legs, Jiayi throws the boomerang slice and the blade chases the feline and hits its neck squarely, ending the confrontation. Done with that, the system comes with all the rewards the player earned by defeating this bronze rank boss, including as the first player to defeat a boss of this level, he reached level 7 and earned the title Bronze Sadness. With the announcement of this player's achievements, some others begin to get annoyed that Jiayi has once again earned an important title before everyone else. On the other hand, other players, like this girl, are so excited about this guy's existence that they strongly wish to marry him if they get the chance. There are also players who don't care about global ranking titles or anything like that, known as the famous low profile, who just want to do their part, and that's it, without drawing much attention. Lastly, in a dark office, a man comments that the name Jiayi has a lot to do with the mythology of Dragon City, therefore he believes this young man is from that country. Within his residence somewhere in the territory, the man slowly drinks his wine and emphasizes that if a specialist like this guy joins their group, their firepower will increase significantly. To this, a subordinate agrees with the saying, "Yes, master." Returning to Jiayi, the global announcement has just ended, and he knows well that this kind of thing will attract a lot of attention to him. Soon it will be necessary to cover his face to not reveal his identity. Finally, to relax, the boy summons a chair from the inventory and reflects that the attributes of the zombie cat were much greater than his. Although he had thought of relying on his intelligence to defeat this opponent, he didn't even need to try too hard to take down a bronze rank boss. However, if he faces a higher level boss, the outcome might be different. Then, without warning, the system reappears and shows that Jiayi has earned another 1,000 prestige points, 1,000 gold, 3 attribute points, and an additional cubic meter of inventory size. Not understanding anything, the player accesses the game panel, where his various achievements were detailed. Among them, he reads the advantages of his title Bronze Sadness, plus 2 points in each attribute, and reduces by 5% all attributes of bronze rank bosses or low-level creatures. Jiayi had to choose between keeping his previous title, First Blood, or switching to the newly acquired one. Naturally, the player opted for the latter. Once decided, the effect would start within an hour. With these new attributes, Jiayi felt he could annihilate the zombie cat in the blink of an eye if it were to reappear. Honestly, he was curious to see how his attributes would stack up once he changed professions. Half an hour later, Jiayi approached the dead cat, which had dropped an item beside it. He noticed it was the zombie cat horn. If blown, this horn would summon the cat itself to fight for you for 30 minutes, requiring 2 days to cool down before it could be used again. The cat, when summoned, would have 60% of the user's attributes. Might kill someone, the XP goes to the horn's owner, but no items drop. As always, Jiayi loved how this summoning item worked, as it now gave him a partner for more tense moments. Moreover, the zombie cat could very well be completely skinned to make coats, food, and equipment from its body parts, which also seemed like a great idea. Anyway, Jiayi dismissed the creature and continued wandering through the gym, until he stumbled upon a storage room where he believed the silver safe was located. Without wasting time, he gently placed his hand on the door to open it quietly. Inside, there were skeletons with skulls, blood, and eyes scattered everywhere, which made the boy realize that this cat had peculiar tastes. Undoubtedly, anyone who saw this would panic. In the protagonist's mind, luckily, this was the apocalypse. Otherwise, such a sight would shock the world. In any case, if the cat had hidden any treasure there and it wasn't found, it would be a huge waste. Then Jiayi saw a gym dumbbell tied to a treadmill and imagined the eerie creature working out. Aside from this crazy invention, there was nothing more interesting in the room, so Jiayi was frustrated with the expectations he had set for this place. Not to say he even tried, the boy prepared to pull the last white blanket to discover any possible item. And when he did, there was the much-desired silver safe. With the discovery, the boy earned 20 prestige points. He asked the system to open the chest, which would take 60 seconds to complete. Meanwhile, the countdown began, and when it opened, the rewards appeared. Jiayi gained 360 gold, 50 EXP, and his inventory expanded by 0.4 cubic meters. Among the items, there were the white wing cape and a silver skills book. This book unlocked the explosive double slash skill. When the two strikes hit the target, an explosion occurs. Despite its greatness, Jia knew the skill was hard to use, not that he was complaining, as he thought he could handle it without much trouble. Without a doubt, he decided to learn this technique and added it to his repertoire. Then the system congratulated the player on his new achievement, and he looked at his abilities in the game menu with a satisfied expression. Lastly, he took out the White Wing Cape. This cape was a silver rank item made from the feathers of various rare birds. Besides increasing physical and agility by +2, it featured a skill that allowed the user to glide for a short period of time. Obviously, Jia Yi was impressed with this ability. With this new equipment, the boy checked his status just to admire what he had become. With his new cape on his back, now that he had defeated the zombie cat, he had become even stronger and was well aware of it. Initially, his only desire was to kill Lai Halbo, but it seemed that was no longer his only goal. After all, why kill just one man when he could send the whole family to hell? Anyway, now Jia Yi had one remaining mission to complete, the Kill 100 alone. Later on, he encountered some others in another corner of the gym and drew their attention. When the monsters turned their gaze towards him, the human prepared to activate his cape's ability to test it. Soon, he activated the skill and couldn't wait to initiate the attack on his own rather than waiting to be attacked first, as was the case with the cat. Gliding with his wings, the man moved confidently among the zombies and leaped over them all, clearly intending to practice this new technique that gave him an incredible advantage in any fight. From above, he positioned his sword for a stab and plunged the blade into the head of a monster. Then, without giving the rest a chance to reach him, he withdrew the weapon from the creature's skull and resumed his gliding with the conviction that he had found an extremely useful item. Soon, he stopped flying for a moment and turned his gaze to another zombie, this time to test the explosive double slash. Then he positioned his sword in front and pulled it back to gain momentum. Without delay, the skill was activated with all its power, so much so that the user himself was fascinated by its beauty. The double slash struck the zombie squarely, and as the description said, since both hits landed on the target, an explosion occurred, creating a strong wind. Unable to control his flight properly, Jia Yi was caught off guard and was violently pushed backward. Having to react before things got worse, the player lifted his sword and plunged it into the ground with all his might in an attempt to stop his forward motion under the heavy influence of the wind. After regaining control, Jia Yi muttered to himself that this zombie had at least 30% more attributes than the others, but still, there was nothing left of it after that explosion. Thinking about it now, the swing of the sword in this move was the same as the boomerang cut, but the effect was far more powerful. Finally, the boy announced the end of the tests and declared that it was time to take things more seriously. Next, the Apocalypse game system was seen congratulating the player on several achievements of XP and gold, as Jia Yi had turned the court into a true war scene by slaughtering every zombie there. Because of this, he had just completed the mission Kill 100 alone. With that, he gained a cheat and a bronze rank piece of equipment. After finishing off the zombies, the boy realized he had done all this in a short time, which genuinely startled him. Then it was time to collect the items. But soon he thought his luck had ended, as he now had some resource cards that weren't very valuable. Regardless, he decided to collect the pile of things from the ground after relaxing a bit. Then, as soon as he sat down to rest, the system asked if he wanted the bronze item now or the cheat. First of all, Jia Yi decided to take the item and save more luck for later, as he believed that would yield better results from past experience. Finally, he clicked the draw button, which selected a random item and delivered it to the user. Then the player waited while it was being produced, until the blood absorption ring appeared on the screen, capable of stealing energy from the rival in battle, in addition to providing +1 strength and physical to the user. The item's ability inflicts self-inflicted damage on the enemy, the 5% of it being converted into energy and transmitted through the weapon to the user's body. As usual, Jia Yi smiled at the capability of this new equipment and put it on immediately. Moreover, once he had picked up such a sinister item, his fear was real of ending up with a mediocre cheat. Soon, the system indicated that each normal cheat provides practical effects that are of great help to the player. With a drop of sweat on his face, Jia Yi decided to produce the cheat to see what would happen. After waiting, a certain apprehension took hold of the player as he saw the result. A glow filled the room and left the boy even more amazed, as the system displayed the automatic collection ability, which stores all the loot dropped as long as it's near the player, unless, of course, the inventory is full. In that case, automatic collection doesn't work. Well, from now on, Jia Yi knew that he could wipe out the zombies and still scoop up all the items without having to bend down. Upon discovering this convenience, the lad jumped off the bench with enthusiasm. Even though he was afraid that this high drop rate might attract unnecessary trouble, now he didn't care about that anymore. However, he wanted to know from the system why this cheat was level 1. Then it was explained that this level could rise if the player picked up the same cheat at another point in the game. If that happened, the reach of the ability would improve, and he would be able to pick up more distant items automatically. Regarding this, he was informed that the mission providing cheats varies according to the environment, state, and event where the player is located. Excited, Jie couldn't wait for the next one he would encounter out there. Finally, he glanced at the court, at all the corpses scattered all around, then walked among the bodies and received the items without having to stoop to collect them. Suddenly, he picked up so many items that his ability underwent an optimization. From now on, equipment, items, and resources in general would be automatically sorted into several categories and organized in the menu. To check and practice, Jie opened the inventory and liked what he saw, with each item properly in its place and easy to find. Setting that aside for the moment, the man wondered what time it was since he had spent a good time in that fight against the cat and then this event at the court. When he looked at the watch, he noticed that it was time to leave, and he didn't have time to stop to eat now. It was necessary to immediately head to the Lee family village, therefore, he dashed off. Meanwhile, in a gigantic mansion, Lai Hobo was spending the afternoon with two beautiful maidens and seemed to be distracted, but a sound took his focus away from the conversation. It was the clock indicating something then. The man stood up and completely changed his expression. Then he simply slapped one of the women across the face and began to question where were the subordinates who had only gone out to find two people all afternoon and had not returned yet. The butler informs that the mercenary group went to Modi University at 7 in the morning, and there are many zombies there. So the situation is complicated, and one should not expect the team to return anytime soon. Hearing this, Halbo could no longer stand hearing about these unbearable monsters. Moreover, he claims to have killed a zombie and does not understand why he did not earn any experience points. Halbo thought he could have his guards weaken the zombies and give the boss only the last blow, but this scheme did not ensure XP for the bourgeois. At that moment, a noise of a door opening came down the corridor. The silhouette of a man emerged in shadow, and his real identity could not be revealed at that time. Finally, Halbo receives his uncle Rong and immediately asks if he found the orphan and that hussy. Rong throws his bag on the floor and informs that he found the girl, but not the man. Full of rage, Halbo wants to know where the woman is, imagining that she hid during all this time from him. However, the employee sent for the search informs that Yo Jing-han is dead and inside the bag that he brought. Faced with this shocking revelation, Halbo loses his reaction for a moment. Rong adds that he used the clues given by the master to find the roommate of the victim. After that, they reach the victim herself in a warehouse of her school. That said, the man opens the bag and shows the corpse of Jing-han, saying that it was left in a dumpster where a man's blood-soaked clothes were also found. Before being killed, the woman was terribly tortured. All the parts where she was injured are extremely sensitive nerves, where the pain is practically unbearable. The killer seems to have some relationship with the acupuncture of the Dragon Country, as he was very methodical about the region he wanted to hit and had clear knowledge of what he was doing. As Hobo assimilated the scene, he ran off wanting to vomit. Rong concludes that this style of torture is so complex that not even some more skilled and experienced assassins are capable of carrying it out. Without a doubt, the person who killed Yo Jing-han was her enemy, or at least hated her. Moreover, he notes that this criminal might be after his master Halbo. However, Halbo responds that this girl was just another pretty face, and if it weren't for that human trash, everything would be different. And speaking of this human trash, Halbo realizes that, indeed, it might be that Lin Zilu is behind all this, but he thinks that an ordinary orphan would not have so much disposition and talent for such an activity. By the way, Halbo comments that he prepared a big surprise for Ziluo, but he hadn't sent it yet, so he couldn't know that the girlfriend betrayed him. Rong asks if Lin Zilu is the son of Lin Jian, and the boss confirms that he is. Therefore, the subordinate agrees that the son might have some involvement, but with the help of some assistant, because no ordinary person would be capable of doing what happened to the victim. And since they're talking about someone with the capacity for that, Rong thinks that not even the 100 men he brought for mansion security are enough. Disbelieving, Halbo questions how this is possible if the mercenaries brought are the most efficient killers of the Dragon Country, and Rong himself is in the top 10 of the national list. Anyway, since the employee insists, the boss despairs and tells him to bring more people for security, whoever it is, even if the guy hasn't finished training yet. The important thing is that Halbo does not base himself, as he shits himself with fear of this happening. About this, Rong assures that he would give his life to protect the young master. If he is able to defend the Lee family, the man really wouldn't mind dying and doesn't just say that offhand. Returning to the protagonist, he crosses the city fields and collects bodies along the way. He thought he would only reach level 8 at night, but it seems he is able to advance the work quite easily. In other words, he just leveled up to that. If he continues at this pace, Ji won't need to face those dungeons, which would be a good advance. After fueling up to not lose energy, the boy follows the path and arrives near the Lee family mansion. Soon he promises that he's going after all the enemies. All he wants to know is if the Lie are ready to pay the debt they owe him. As time passes, the sky gradually darkens, while dozens of mercenaries patrol the perimeter armed to the teeth. Hidden in a tree, Ji watches the movement of the men and, with all the caution in the world, he jumps down without making any noise to remain hidden. Further ahead, he reaches a certain part of the mansion and presses a button in the grass. If he is correct from what he remembers, this is the place he imagines. Indeed, a secret passage just opened in the ground. After doing what he wanted there, the man returns and closes the passage again. The plan is to leave an escape route for Halbo, and when he tries to escape, Ji will kill him. According to the protagonist, this method is one of the most famous strategies in the Dragon Country. Moreover, seeing the number of guards there, the boy questions if this will be enough to prevent what is going to happen. Then Ji approaches the house where the mercenaries march. Noticing the backs of the soldiers, he sees the symbol of the Mercenary Hunters Guild, the trusted group of Halbo, and which has always been an enemy of Ji in his past life. And it's precisely because of this that the former god of war knows very well how these guys operate. Anyway, he never deeply observed the military organization of the family from the past, so he needs to stay sharp. Looking at how the guards were allocated around the territory, he considers that the organization was well done, but believes there is a breach in the security. At that moment, someone calls the name of Rong Zhan. With a drop of sweat running down his face, Ji knows who this guy is. Peeking at the entrance, the intruder sees that Rong was indeed there. He is one of the gods of war and hunting from the land of the dragon. Before the apocalypse, he led a group of mercenaries that fought in war-torn areas for many years. Under the control of the Lee family, this man utilized his expertise in hand-to-hand combat in ways that led to severe consequences. In the protagonist's past life, after Halbo's many failed attempts to capture his target, Rong began to pursue Ji on the master's orders. Within days, the pursuer repeatedly pushed Ji to the brink of hopelessness. He is undoubtedly the worst enemy he has ever faced. However, with tricks like the substitute card, Ji managed to be Rong Zhan's greatest disgrace, escaping from the mercenaries' clutches every time, earning him the title in the game of greatest shame. Reflecting now, Ji imagines that fate has brought the two back together, and they are about to face each other head-on. Meanwhile, Rong seems to have heard something and swings his head from side to side in search of intruders, leaving the intruder with his heart in his hand after having reacted quickly and hidden again. After the scare, Ji moves away from there and reflects that in this fight, Rong Zhan must die, as once that happens, the Lee family will lose a fundamental piece on their chessboard, greatly increasing the chances of victory. With that in mind, Ji puts on his hidden mask and moves among the enemy mercenary forces. A soldier notifies Rong that Halbo wants to meet him, and Ji knows he can't miss the opportunity, so he waits for the men to move away and continues on his way. At the same time, Rong is very alert, sensing that something is off in the area, although he has started to think it might just be in his head. In any case, he asks the guard to strengthen the village's defenses. Internally, he promises that no matter who the intruder is, this person will die if they dare invade the Lee family's property. Later, specifically at midnight, Halbo can't stay awake any longer and asks Rong if he can sleep, because if anyone outside had the idea to try entering, surely the zombies would have taken care of that person by now. In any case, the god of war firmly believes that they are being targeted at this very moment, so it's good to stay alert. Out of patience for this, Halbo throws his watch to the ground forcefully, convinced that human trash wouldn't dare show his face around there. The butler suggests that the master might distract himself with some activity, and this gives the spoiled brat a good idea. After all, he remembers that Rong brought a zombie home earlier for scientific research. But since there are many zombies outside, he at least wanted to play with this one. Rong replies that he can't stop the master, but fears that the monster might act violently. At the same time, the commander reflects that using this zombie to calm the master might be a good alternative. Halbo assures that he'll just play nicely for a little while and won't put himself in danger, especially since even if the zombie tries to attack, the mercenaries are there to handle the problem after all. Finally, with that decided, Rong orders them to bring a creature. Being controlled by just one man, the chained zombie had a quite imposing physique and seemed furious. At the slightest carelessness, it seemed like things could get out of control very quickly. In any case, Halbo orders them to bring the cage, then the subordinates comply and fetch a huge chain where young women were kept prisoners. With that, Halbo picks up a bell and starts to tremble, causing a strange reaction in the women. Suddenly, they become agitated and begin to act desperately. The member of the Lee family drops the bell and displays a look of satisfaction, as if fulfilling some petty desire with it. Then he puts on his beautiful slippers and goes up to the cage, where the women were shaking the bars like mad. After displaying a sinister smile on his face, the man scares the mercenaries around, who would never have imagined witnessing such a bizarre scene. However, some of them didn't seem uncomfortable with the situation at all. One in particular receives the key to the cage in his hands and the order to open it. Without delay, the man turns the key in the lock and pulls the zombie closer. With a malicious expression on his face, the mercenary removes the muzzle from the beast and shows no fear of it, even with its dangerous teeth bared. Then Halbo orders the guards to put the zombie inside the cage after unlocking it. A man present despairs, commenting that this is too cruel, and asks the boss to release the women. Then another guy needs to explain that this guy is a newbie who replaced a bodyguard who died, and that's why he's acting this way, although he is strong. For that reason, the guy asks the master to ignore the rookie. Halbo gets annoyed by the fact that someone wants to tell him what to do, but the first man keeps begging for the women to be released. The other guy, who tried to calm the situation, realizes the blunder and begs to be spared. Then Halbo approaches the guy who insisted and confesses that it had been a long time since someone challenged his authority. As they had said that this rookie, Wanda Hu, was so strong, the boss orders them to teach him a lesson. At that moment, two mercenaries come together to immobilize the man. One of them tries to punch him in the face, but Wang grabs the attacker's hand. Rong watches the scene and is truly impressed, as the rookie is really fighting against two bodyguards at the same time. Obviously, not only is the commander surprised, but also the very guard, who was blocked, as he never would have imagined that this guy would be stronger than him in raw strength. Used to beating up anyone, the brute promises to make the opponent pay with his life for having humiliated him in public. But he won't do this alone, so he calls two colleagues to help. The two approach after Haixing's request, and they don't want Wang Dehu to stand out and impress Rong. For this, they don't waste time in advance against the opponent, putting him in trouble in this unfair fight. As soon as he is grabbed, Haixing aims a punch at him, and the strike connects forcefully, visibly shaking the rookie. Haixing doesn't stop there and continues to strike the man mercilessly. Hiku, against three at the same time, finds himself unable to react. However, Halbo makes it clear that they are not to kill the man and remembers that this guy really wanted to protect the group of girls. Because of this, the master wants him to personally see them dying. Then the guards bring Wang closer to the cell and hold his head to force him to watch. In the meantime, one of the guards begins to untie the zombie, and as soon as they finish doing this, they push him inside the cell. Finally, the monster was loose inside and full of defenseless victims to feed on. He approaches one of the women who, by then, already seemed resigned to death and showed no reaction. When she is bitten on the neck, she simply accepts the situation and maintains a terrible expression of listlessness and apathy. With wide-open eyes, Wang Dehu watches the scene, and his sense of empathy causes some tears to stream down his face. Faced with that grotesque scene, the man seemed increasingly emotionally shaken, until they let him go and give him more space. Immediately, Dafu collapses to his knees as if he had lost part of his soul. Halbo orders them to throw the man into the cage, since he is as strong as they say. Upon hearing this, the mercenaries involved praise the master's sagacity for thinking of the best ideas, as none of them had thought of that. At the same time, some of them disagreed with this horrible behavior but decided to remain silent. Then, as they carry Wang to the cell, they see the zombie interacting aggressively with what remains in the area, hinting at a violent scene. Finally, the man is thrown into the cell and soon catches the attention of a monster, which turns its sinister eyes to its newest victim, who will soon also have parts of his body torn from the rest. When the beast attacks, the young man remembers his mother saying that she hopes he returns home safely, so he apologizes to her for not being able to return and take care of her. However, an unexpected reaction takes over his body. Soon, he decides he cannot die, as his mother is waiting at home. Convinced of this, the man positions himself to launch an attack and dives into the zombie, landing a punch on its face. Next, the human pushes the monster with all his strength, dragging it around the cell until he slams its back against the bars. However, a large amount of blood comes from Dahu's mouth. After all, the zombie had sunk its claws into his back and caused serious damage. Even with the severe injury, the man does not give up, but the strength of the zombie was so great that a convincing response was difficult, and by that point, the wound on his back was already leading the human to death. Without missing a second of this fight, Halbo says how exciting it is, as if it were a television show. Even close to death, Wang Dehu positions himself and throws another punch at the zombie, and this time, from the impact, it seems that the blow landed squarely. Having done that, he turns to the audience, clearly in distress, and collapses to the ground beside the zombie he had just subdued. Then, he internally apologizes to his mother for not having listened to what she said, admitting that he had been wrong all this time. With the end of the fight, the men involved watched the situation. Rong regrets that Wang has died, while Haixing finally saw this man getting what he deserved. At the same time, the other two mercenaries thought that Devu died quickly afterwards. Speaking of him, the man begins to transform into a zombie, until his eyes assume that sinister appearance that the same creature that infected him had. From outside, hidden high in a tree, Jia Yi feels that the moment to act has come and approaches the guards in the village yard. Quickly, the first one already has his neck cut, and the blood spreads on the ground from the wound. Having done that, the protagonist picks up the clothes of the dead mercenary and continues on his way. Further ahead, a man mistakes the intruder for Adi and asks what he is doing there. Jia Yi responds that he saw someone sleeping and came to teach a lesson, while the other man yawns and complains that the superiors are all inside, while the rest are stuck doing this boring patrolling job. Then two more soldiers arrive on the scene, complaining that they are working to the last drop of sweat in this dump, so much so that they are barely sleeping and have to deal with those damn zombies 24 hours a day. Jia Yi takes advantage and stirs up the three, saying that they are not being treated like humans around there. However, the first guard questions when Ada suddenly got bigger, then Jia Yi looks at the guy as if he can't believe he just thought he was a colleague to begin with. Following this, the invader leaves a trail of bodies through the village, while saying that those who tell a secret right after discovering it do not deserve space in this world. After this massacre, Jia Yi walks to the Lai residence with the mess spread all over the place. Those who survived no longer had the same drive to pursue the intruder, so they fled without a second thought. Some, of course, remained along the way, but were quickly subdued by Jia Yi. The problem arose when one of them, holding a flare, managed to fire it off even after being struck by the invader's sword. However, Jia Yi intercepted the projectile with his sword, preventing an alarm that would have drawn all the mercenaries to his location. Having done that, he watched the weapon gently fall from the sky with that wasted ammunition, a smile on his face. Fortunately, in his past life, Jia Yi had researched almost everything about the Lei family, including the ammunition they used. Without this knowledge, his mission would undoubtedly have been far more complicated. As the player approached the final destination, the system indicated that the exterior security of the mansion had been eliminated, and the host's path of revenge was just beginning. This special mission was named Jia Yi Must Seek Revenge. Merely missing the protagonist's shirt, the system tasked him with neutralizing the 269 individuals implicated in the offense against the hosts, ensuring they faced consequences. The reward would be another cheat and a bronze rank piece of equipment. Upon reading this, Jia Yi stated that Haobo had yet another reason to die, thus accepting the mission. Following this, the interface showed that the barrier of vengeance had just been activated. If any of the 269 destined to die escaped the perimeter, Jia Yi would be notified of their location and could pursue them later. Jia Yi checked the attributes of his barrier in the menu and saw that it could mentally torture someone to death, a technique first encountered in the war between Japan and the Dragon Country. The Dragon Country had used such a barrier in Tokyo and pursued all those who fled the capital, plunging the entire nation into despair. Remembering this, the man saw this as a chance to test the real power of this war device. As the mission officially began, deaths started being registered out of nowhere, even though the player hadn't laid a finger on anyone at that moment. Quickly, he headed to the house in search of more information about what could be happening. Inside, a man in a suit complained that a brute named Crocodile had just killed a girl. With 3 more suffocated, the giant apologized for the mishap and announced that they had just lost another toy. Amid this, a dark voice emerged in the room, questioning why the boys weren't playing with him. Most of the men were terrified, but not wrong, who watched the scene attentively and how that voice echoed around the room. Then the commander rose from the sofa, ready to act. Although he displayed confidence and maintained an upright posture, the truth was Rong Zhan was worried about the powerful murderous aura he felt in the air, something he had never experienced before. Compared to this man, the aura of the Lee family's commander was nothing, he thought to himself. As Haobo fell to the ground in despair, shouting that the man had come to kill him, the butler lifted the master and calmed him, reminding him that Rong and the mercenaries were present. Sweating profusely, the boss ordered the commander to kill whoever it was. Finally, even without seeing the enemy, Rong asked everyone to sit down a bit to talk. At the same time, he figured the guy must have wiped everyone out outside. Although the exterior guards were not elite, they would surely kill at least 10 ordinary people without much trouble. However, the intruder had killed them all alone. For this reason, the commander questioned whether it was a human, a god, or perhaps an entire squad. At this point, Jia Yi commented that he was human but would become the Reaper to harvest the souls of every man present. Hearing these words, Rong gestured for the mercenaries behind him to search for the mysterious voice. They roamed the house and scoured every corner. Suddenly, a flashbang grenade was thrown near the men. The device was activated, and the mercenaries could see absolutely nothing. Amidst this, Jia approached slowly and emerged through one of the mansion's doors, exuding a blue aura around his body, hands always in his pockets. Using the Sea of Thorns, Jia incapacitated his adversary swiftly, leaving very few untouched. Then the legendary fighter known as the former god of war used his boomerang cut to swiftly incapacitate 2 more guards. As he was wearing a mask, Jia could not be seen, not even by the powerful Rongzhan, who could not see the invader, who threw another grenade in the direction of the enemy commander. With that, a huge explosion engulfed the house, and Jia practically celebrated the victory amid the chaos instigated. However, a human sound made the supposed victor hold back in his celebration and turn his attention back. It turned out to be Rong, who, for some reason, survived the explosion even though among the many men at his side, almost only he remained alive. One of the survivors told the commander that the spike attack was almost like witchcraft and had practically wiped everyone out. Rong added that the whirling blade had killed several brothers from the mercenary group, including Black Bear, Crocodile, and White Wolf. Out of patience, the man asked his subordinate how many soldiers remained. He answered that there were still 66 available, with 10 seriously injured and some others still blinded. Enraged, Haobo asked who the hell had ruined his fun and ordered Rong to kill the intruder at all costs. After all, it wasn't possible that this madman could kill everyone there alone. Promptly, Rong ordered the butler Zhao to separate the young master, Skinny Monkey, and a few others and hide in the secret passage, while the rest went after the intruder. For his part, Zhao believed that the enemy was not far. Rong touched his uncle's shoulder in a comforting manner and set off on his mission. Nearby, with his drink in hand, Jia was surprised that the butler seemed to know best where he was. As Jia had thought, the list had taken half the men to escort Haobo to escape. The system indicated that there were still 69 enemies left, so the protagonist decided to kill those who were after him first. Then he opened the system and checked the information on Rongzhan and Zhao Qiguang. The leader of the mercenaries had already managed to equip himself with 3 bronze rank items in a very short time. Amidst this, Rong demanded the coward to show up soon, but Jia knew that such pointless provocation would lead nowhere, and that this guy was just trying to buy time for his boss to escape. Jia opened the menu and used the zombie cat horn, summoning the feline he had defeated in the gym. After that, he separated his knife and threw it directly into the air. The weapon passed through the support of a chandelier on the ceiling, which fell near the mercenaries. The shards of the chandelier spread through the air with force, causing severe cuts to the men. In addition, a bizarre meow could be heard. At that moment, the zombie cat attacked directly at the neck of one of the Lai Mansion guards, while Jia finally arrived with the Tang Dynasty sword to personally fight and take down several more enemies along the way. When he finished killing all the weaker mercenaries, Jia turned his face towards Rong and displayed his mask that prevented anyone from checking his information. Rong lost his composure amid all this chaos and began to shout, wanting to know who the hell was the person who had caused this pandemonium. Still, the commander, who gathered more men, told the enemy not to get too conceited. On the other hand, Jia analyzed the status of the opponent and saw that his abilities were still very low, and that killing him wouldn't be worth more than these mercenaries around. In the end, he had placed a huge expectation on this guy in vain. Either way, he announced that he would show Rong what the word despair meant. Having said that, the boy positioned his foot back and gained momentum to strut with his sword among the adversaries, slashing them one by one without them even being able to react. When Jia got very close to Rong's face, the leader of the mercenaries bulged his eyes and froze with fear. Overwhelmed by the situation, Rong realized there was no way out and submitted to his fate. However, instead of ending the rival at that moment, Jia announced that he still needed to pursue Haobo and the rest, and after checking the barrier of vengeance, he presumed they were nearby. Then he asked the leader of the mercenaries for a little favor. Rong replied that he could no longer be called the leader of this team as almost everyone had been killed. Hearing this, Jia reflected that he had killed all this guy's subordinates in front of him, ruined his years of hard work, and gradually undermined every thread of hope for him to resist. In the end, this was the best part of the revenge so far. Rong wanted to know who this man was after all, because if he didn't know, he would die regretting it. Ironic, Jia questioned whether that was a good thing and approached the rival with the knife in hand. Ultimately, without hesitation, Jia delivered a swift and decisive strike, concluding the confrontation. After doing this, he commented to himself that he still remembered Rong's face that day when he stepped on Jiayi's head and said that he was nothing more than an ant, in addition to having called the boy orphan trash. Ironically, after all this, the player still had the confidence to simply challenge the Lei family. As he stepped on the corpse of his enemy, Jia thanked him for speaking the truth, You should not talk too much in front of the enemy, but kill him as soon as possible, otherwise unwanted problems will come. Honestly, Jia felt happy that Rong had died regretting. After killing this important figure, the protagonist knew well that the Lee family had just become much weaker. When he headed for the exit, he forgot that there was a pile of bodies on the floor, so he dodged each one of them before finally finding the door out. Meanwhile, at the secret exit, Halbo was still desperate, while the butler tried to calm him, reminding him that Rong and the others would take care of everything. However, a body was thrown away to dent the door of the hideout. At the same time, the house boss imagined it to be the man that Xiaolu had sent. This person had killed Jing Han first and now came to kill him. The butler asked the master to stay calm, as he had sent the rest of the people to the secret passage, so the intruder shouldn't think they were there. In any case, Halbo didn't know how Xiaolu had learned about the relationship between him and the guy's girlfriend and understood even less how Zilu had managed to find an assassin of this level. According to Zhao, perhaps Jian had left a trump card for his son. However, Halbo thinks this is impossible because when Jian died, the Li family wiped out everyone from the Lin family. Moreover, if that boss hadn't insisted on letting the Lin family leave a descendant, Zilu would have been under the ground a long time ago. Outside, Jia Yi tries to listen in on the enemy's conversation. They have just reached a conclusion that changes their minds about what's happening. It seems they heard Zilu's voice and don't understand how this guy found this place. Hearing this, Jia Yi reflects that it has been a long time since he's been targeted by these guys, and there's a lot he still doesn't know about this whole scheme. On the other side of the door, Halbo yells directly at Xiaolu that he should have died centuries ago by his hands. Jia Yi pretends not to know who Xiaolu is and asks who this Jian is, and what's this about killing the entire Lin family. Halbo doesn't fall for the trick and emphasizes that the enemy is an orphan who doesn't even remember his father's name, but that he deserves everything that's happening to him. The boss explains that when his father was about to be promoted, Lin Jian reported him, ruining the Li family's plans. For that reason, the entire Lin family was marked for death. If it weren't for the word of the Li family boss, Zilu would already be dead. Changing the subject, Halbo asks where Xiaolu got this helper, but if he is alone, the boss warns that he will send a guard right now to fetch the boy. Jia Yi responds that everything the guy said is useless, because he's going to make the entire Li family disappear from the map. As arrogant as ever, Halbo tells the guy to stop dreaming, and the door bursts open and reveals the masked Avenger alongside his zombie cat. Jia tries to punch the opponent, but he easily dodges. At that moment, the cat attacks the butler, but the man manages to react in time and hits the feline with a punch. At the same time, the half-hour summoning of the animal just ended, meaning the cat will return to the horn. Either way, this was all planned by Jia Yi. Finally, the boy removes his mask and reveals his real identity to leave no doubt. Bohao simply can't believe it was Zilu all this time, killing all the guards who were placed in his path. Even with the truth staring them in the face, Zhao still can't believe that this kid managed to defeat Rong Zhan and did what he did in the village. Ignoring what was said, Jia Yi replies that the old man must be smart enough to survive in the apocalypse, since on the 7th day of the game, the protection for beginners will end, and then their martial arts will become as weak as a random zombie. Amid this, Halbo still can't believe what's happening, but Jia Yi confirms that he alone is enough to finish everyone off. Having said that, the man approaches the butler and punches him, but Zhao successfully blocks and moves away to gain distance. With a mocking smile, Jia Yi acknowledges that the old man is quite strong, because if he had hit Rong like that, the guy would have been defeated instantly. But anyway, since the situation has come to this, Zhao provokes a reaction in his own body and reveals an extremely muscular physique. In turn, the invader raises his blade. When he suffers the first attack and dodges, the butler calls the rival despicable, but Jia Yi doesn't care about a fair fight, he just wants to kill the guy. With that in mind, he launches the explosive double slash. The blade cuts Zhao's arm, then the blade spins back to its original place, but before that, it hits the target's body again. Faced with this, Zhao refuses to accept being hit, as he trained for 50 years and never imagined being defeated so easily. With a pained expression, the man suffers from the damage received, but the situation worsens. After all, as stated in the description of the explosive double slash, if the weapon hits the target on the way there and back, an explosion occurs. After the explosion, Jia Yi advances with his sword and pierces Zhao's neck, while telling the guy not to worry because he will make sure his enemy died so there's no doubt. Afterwards, the swordsman feels it's a pity that fights are not like in his past life, as his opponent falls to the ground. However, this proves that it's not just about power, but also analyzing the situation accurately to stay in tune with the era you are living in. Otherwise, death is what awaits you. By the way, in the corner of the room, there was Halbo lying down and injured because of the explosion. Jia Yi approaches with his weapon and pierces the man's thigh. Habo takes a few seconds to realize what happened and starts screaming in pain. Jia asks if the guy has stopped pretending to be dead, and to cause even more pain to him, he repeatedly stabs his sword into the enemy's leg. Desperate, Habo screams for someone to save him and assures that his father will not let Yahello get away with this. In turn, Yahello laughs at this and spins his sword in the thigh of the Lee family member. In panic from the excessive pain, Habo begs the guy to kill him soon. Jia promises that this will happen, but not without remembering one thing. Then the man opens his menu and takes out his dull knife, which will definitely take a long time to cut anything. Without wasting time, the main player stabs the enemy, but the knife does not pierce his skin. Ironically, Jia apologizes and warns that he won't be able to pierce the guy with that. But anyway, he's willing to try as he injures his opponent even more and states that the first stab is in his own name. Then he recounts that this knife has accompanied him for 10 long years, while he hid and faced life or death fights. In the end, it's a pity that Habo can't feel even 1% of the pain that Jia went through. Habo asks what's this 10 years talk about because he only found out about it 3 years ago, and since then he had continuous thoughts of torturing Yahello. Hearing this, Jia smiles and stabs the opponent again, saying that this stab is once again for himself. The second is because he's feeling happy. Habo screams for the guy to stop, but Jia smiles again and says that the third stabbing is for the entire Lin family. Because, although he hasn't seen them before, Jia believes that it's fair for his son to seek revenge for his father. About the rest, the protagonist approaches the knife to the opponent's body, but ends up running out of ideas. Because of this, he repeats that the next stab is just because he's still happy. Then he picks up a crucible tongs from his menu and approaches the victim again, who trembles with fear non-stop. As he places the tongs in the guy's mouth, Jia thanks him for introducing this torture method that he used to kill several people, and recognizes that the Lee family member has talent for it. With desperation in his eyes, Habo is cut once again by the knife, and the impulse of his body activates the tongs, causing tremendous damage. In the huge hall, one of the bosses of the Lee family was in Jia's hands, and he could not miss the chance to do whatever he wanted. After this, Habo's face is simply expressing excruciating pain. Despite this, Jia states that the man has not suffered even 1% of what he should have suffered because of the amount of suffering he caused to other people who, many times, didn't deserve any of it. Either way, looking at the enemy, the boy loses interest in torturing him. Besides seeing that the guy stopped moving, the attacker still thinks he's acting by pretending to be dead, but soon realizes that the guy is indeed a good actor, but could never act like that. Finally, with the former rival dead, Jia emphasizes that breaking the spirit of this poor soul took his body to the limit. Having said that, he leaves the room, but not without launching an explosive double slash behind. The first cut hits the target's neck, then Jia opens an umbrella and avoids getting dirty with all the blood that splattered. Later that night, Jia observes his surroundings and comments that the nighttime view of the Lee family village is not bad at all. With the success of his mission, the player just earned the Vengeful Heart talent, catching him by surprise. Not understanding how he got this talent so easily, he checks the description and discovers that according to the game system's insistence on reminding, the concepts of talent and talent skill are different. Skills can be learned from skill books, but talents are triggered automatically under various conditions, such as the player's attributes, emotions, mood, etc. In the case of the Vengeful Heart, now Jia, when he recognizes some group as a rival, gains an attribute bonus. The stronger the hatred against that group, the bigger the bonus, which can reach up to 20%. Honestly, Jia didn't imagine that this talent could be so useful, but with it, his attributes will just grow more and more, making him even stronger. Considering this a growth-type talent, the player realizes that he has a great advantage in his hands. By the way, for having completed his mission, he looks at his other rewards, then asks the system to send the bronze rank item. Soon the item was developed and ends up being a small magic wand capable of increasing magic damage and reducing the time needed to cast it by 5% each. Besides that, the user regenerates mind points 20% faster. Honestly, since it's an item made for the magi profession, Jia thinks it's not for him, but anyway, he stores the wand in his inventory, because he can sell the equipment and make some money with it. Besides taking a look at the inventory, he highlights that the cheat to automatically collect items is too good, because that way he doesn't have to worry about leaving anything behind. Also for that reason, he reflects that the death system in this game is abnormal. In the apocalypse, if you kill a person, her inventory disappears and you can't access any item. All you can expect is that some loot falls. However, now, everyone can only loot the body sometime after death. When everyone found out about this mechanism, people decided to avoid killing each other, even considering it an incentive from the game to discourage murder. In fact, after returning to Rongzhan, Yi finds a purification necklace in his inventory, an item that grants +1 mind and has the ability to remove negative statuses from the user. Yi doesn't think it's better than his meditation necklace, but considers it useful for battle. The rest of Rong's loot is useless, so he just stores it away. However, there's one more small detail. Yi instructs the system to develop the cheat. Anxiously, the boy waits as the interface loads, which soon announces the completion of the development. It is the absolute enslavement level 1, capable of turning any zombie weaker than the user into a servant. This monster will serve its master until death and possesses some of its master's attributes, but if it dies, it disappears forever. Honestly, Yi is somewhat scared by this possibility and thinks he's dreaming, as he had never seen anything like this in his past life. Yet, it was all real, and he finds it the most incredible thing in the world. Anyway, if this zombie truly remains loyal to its user, Yi starts to think about what to do with it. First of all, the human feels he won't have to do all the dirty and tiring work anymore. After his girlfriend betrayed him, the man thought he would live alone on this planet, not trusting anyone in society anymore. However, if the zombie is willing to do everything that's ordered, the young man feels ready to heal this wound in his heart. He asks what kind of effect happens if he increases the level of this cheat. Then the system explains that the number of zombies that can be enslaved increases. Right away, Yi imagines himself leading a true army of these monsters, but soon returns to concrete reality to not get lost in the world of fantasy. Still, he wonders what level this ability would need to be to provide so many zombies, and which zombie he should enslave, thinking that in the future, they might even become zombie kings. Finally, the man opens a trapdoor and heads to the basement, reflecting whether the monsters serving him will reach the same size they had in his past life. Setting that aside, he remembers that the Lee family's basement had several treasures, so he goes there and finds a large quantity of valuable items just as he thought. There were some gold jewels which are worthless in the apocalypse, but the paintings he found could be useful, so he stores them in his inventory along with a knife inlaid with gemstones, showing how rich this family is. After some time, Yi clears out the basement and leaves it behind in a huge mess. After that, he walks casually with his hands in his pockets and whistling a tune until he returns to the vicinity of the village. Having never slept in such a luxurious place, he thinks it might be a good idea for tonight, so he walks inside. However, there was a huge monster right in front of him. Not believing anyone survived in this village, Yi turns on the flashlight and realizes it's a creature in a cage. It was Wang Dehu zombified, although the protagonist has no idea who he is. However, his attributes were quite eye-catching, and he had a skill called Maximum Attack, which accumulates all the zombie's strength into a single punch, increasing its damage by 150%. But best of all is his epic talent that allows the zombie to gain additional buff points when leveling up. In Jiayi's mind, this monster is as strong as a bronze rank boss. Coincidentally, he found this guy right after getting the enslavement cheat. Anyway, he takes another look at Wang and just hopes not to be bitten. Besides, observing the zombie's mind power, he only has 3 points, and Yi thinks he would be simply stupid if he were human, but nothing would stop him from being a nice guy. Then the human asks the system if he can enslave such a strong zombie, and is answered that yes, he can, as the monster's mind score is low. The average score of all attributes is below that of the human. That said, Yi thinks some more, since honestly, he's feeling a little envious of this guy's talent. But in any case, he decides to take the zombie for himself after all. Delighted, the man confirms his order in the system and observes the process of the monster transitioning from an independent mind to an unconditional servant. However, in the midst of this, Yi realizes that the zombie is fighting against the process, or rather, he's not sure, although he thinks all this resistance will be futile. Indeed, it was, as the enslavement was successfully completed. Now it's time to name the pet zombie. Well, Yi thinks this guy is tall, strong, and dumb, so he'll be called Big Dumb. Then the system informs that, as Big Dumb's panel was forcibly implanted by the system, he will not be able to inherit Jiu's prestige and inventory, nor earn rewards or XP at the same level as the human player. To level up, the monster must follow the same protocol as other zombies. By killing, he earns 1 gold and has a 1% chance of dropping an item. Finally, Yi orders Big Dumb to leave the cage, as he surely can do that on his own with so much strength. That said, the monster forces the bars and makes space between them by force. Then he steps out of the cage and officially joins the master's team.